Thank you. And I'd just like to welcome everybody to the Town of Greater Napanee regular session of council for the 14th of February, 2023. I just want to remind everyone that the meeting is being recorded and live streamed to the Town of Greater Napanee YouTube channel. Having said that, we'll call the meeting to order. We've got a rise and report from closed session. Bear with me here. We'll look for a motion. We have a recommendation that council rise and report from closed session further to all the recommendations made within closed session hereby adopted. Moved by Councillor Hicks, seconded by Councillor Pinal. We need a vote on that first.
Yeah.
All in favor? Opposed? I'll report that in closed session tonight, council approved the closed session minutes of January 26th and January 31st, 2023. Council received information pertaining to a labor relations matter and legal advice and gave direction to staff and deferred the previously scheduled closed session items to February 16th special session. And I will further report that in the closed session at the special meeting on February 13th, council received information about a labor's relation matter and gave direction to staff. Having said that, we'll look for an adoption of the agenda as amended, that the agenda for the regular session of council dated February 14th, 2023 be adopted as amended with closed session agenda moved to 6 p.m. and deferral of previous scheduled closed session items to the special session of February 16th, 2023. Moved by Councillor Norrie, seconded by Councillor Martin. Comments, questions, concerns, all in favor? Opposed, motion carried. Disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Is there any pecuniary interests? Seeing none. Presentations, 5.1, Katrina Furlanetto of the Cataraqui Conservation. Hi, Katrina, long time no see.
No kidding. Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay. Thank you very much. So again, good evening, Mr. Mayor and fellow council members. I'm pleased to be speaking with you this evening. As mentioned, my name is Katrina Furlanetto. I am the General Manager of Cataraqui Region Conservation Authority, or what we go by now as Cataraqui Conservation. So this evening, I will be speaking to you about what is a conservation authority, giving a little bit of orientation of our history, specifically some details about Cataraqui conservation and some of the efforts that we've completed in the last year. A little bit about our programs and services and some changes that will be coming forward, as well as a summary of our budget just for council's understanding, and then a look ahead as to what the next year is going to bring. So in terms of the conservation movement in Ontario, I want to take you back to the 30s, where it was starting to notice that there was severe drought, deforestation, and mismanagement of natural resources across the province of Ontario. Leading into the 40s, this was brought to people's attention, specifically farmers and other interested parties in the environment, and it was brought forward to both municipalities and to the province that something needed to be done. So in the late 40s, the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry created the Conservation Authorities Act, and through the request of municipalities, created what are now known as conservation authorities. And there are 36 conservation authorities across Ontario. Cataraqui Conservation is one in the eastern region of the province. So we continue to be governed under this piece of legislation, under the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, and we were formed on a watershed scale. So what that means is that we have multiple municipalities within our jurisdiction, and we make decisions across jurisdictions, so on a larger scale. So what happens on one municipality's area could impact the adjacent municipality. What happens upstream could impact downstream, and so we're looking kind of at that broad scale. In terms of our funding, we're primary partners are our municipalities, and so we're primarily funded by municipal levy, as well as some self-generated revenue, donations, as well as a tiny portion from the province. So in terms of Cataraqui Conservation, we were established in 1964. Next year will be our 60th anniversary on the landscape. And again, we were formed based on the request of the municipality and of the local community to provide that protection of natural resources within the region. As you can see on the slide, our region is very unique. We have 11 municipalities within our jurisdiction. We have over 770 kilometers of Lake Ontario and St. Lawrence River shoreline, and we have over 170 lakes in our inland area. We have a small team, about 27 full-time staff, who manages this entire region and works with partners like yourself to ensure that we have that overall watershed-based protection in place. Our board is governed through representatives from our municipalities. So we have a 17-member board. And most recently, Mayor Richardson was part of that board, and we thank you for your support. And we look forward to working with Councillor Hicks, who now sits on our board and making some of these decisions. So in terms of the value that we provide our watershed communities, it is vast. So you'll see some of the major pieces listed here on the screen. We provide overall protection of water resources. We look to manage our wetlands, our forests, and our water courses. We provide technical expertise to multiple different types of organizations and to municipalities. And we provide an access to nature, which the last couple of years has been incredible for people from the region and from outside of the region to come in and really understand the importance of protecting our natural spaces and our trails. We've been working on climate mitigation and have a very successful forestry program, of which the town of Greater Napanee has participated and continues to participate moving forward. So in terms of our 2022 accomplishments, I couldn't fit them all on the screen, but I wanted to highlight a few of them that we've completed over the last year, and specifically some projects where the town of Greater Napanee has been a partner moving forward. So you'll see a few of them here listed on the screen. One of those areas is our properties and how we've had to do a tremendous amount of property maintenance in order to allow that enhanced volume of people to come to the properties and enjoy the natural spaces. Another project that I'd like to turn your attention to is the acquisition of updated LiDAR. And so that is going to be a very good tool for our different partners in this region and helping us to help you with your development review services. And then the last project I'll focus on is our modeling of the floodplain mapping of Lake Ontario. And we've been working with the town to contract into different services to get that done. Floodplain mapping is a challenge for us across our watershed. So anytime there's a grant opportunity or a partnership opportunity to get new information, we jump on that. So in terms of, again, our role and responsibility in some of the programs and services that we offer, we had circulated for council our budget and business work plan, which is basically an annual interim strategy that we pulled together to talk about some of our initiatives, talk about who we are, and provide a bit of transparency about how the budget is created, some of the decisions of our board, our challenges, as well as some of the major changes that have happened legislatively, which I'll get into in a slide or two. And so we just wanted to provide that as an education document. And at the end of this presentation, I'd be happy to answer any questions of any of the information that you've seen within that package. So in terms of our programs, we have 5 program areas, and then within each of these programs, we then have different services that we provide. And so for a small team, we offer a vast array of different areas of expertise. As you'll see here on the slide, we have governance and administration, we have a conservation lands and areas management program, we have a natural hazards and watershed management program, drinking water source protection program, and then an education and public programming area. So within each of those different programs, as I mentioned, we have a vast array of services. And one of the unique features of a conservation authority is we can look at that integrated watershed approach. We can work with our network across the province and make sure that there's consistency and interdisciplinary action and technical expertise. So what I want to point out on this slide is some of the changes that have occurred under the Conservation Authorities Act on how we define our programs and services and what this will look like moving forward. So since 2017, our legislation, the Conservation Authorities Act, has been under review by different ministries within our province. And then starting in 2021, the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks at the time announced that there was going to be a 2-phase change or amendment to the Conservation Authorities Act. So in that same year, the phase 1 came out, and that was defining what is considered our mandatory programs and services. So there were 3 pieces of legislation that came out. One of the major pieces that were defined is what's termed as categories. So as you can see here on the screen, there are 3 categories of services that we provide under each of those programs that I spoke to on the previous slide. So category 1 is considered on behalf of the province. And so this is listed in legislation. We must provide these on behalf of the province and work with municipalities to put them on the landscape. So an example of that would be natural hazard management or protection of people and property from flooding, erosion, different pieces like that. And that becomes a very big portion of our permitting role as part of the part that we play with development review services with the municipality. We then have category 2 services, which are services we provide on behalf of the municipality. So should we not provide that service, the municipality would have to take that on. So previously we had plan review services that would be listed there, as well as some of our municipalities' own dam structures or other infrastructure that we manage and operate on their behalf. So that would fit in that particular category. And then the third category is locally supported watershed-based services. And so that is a lot of the public-facing programs and services that we provide, like education, like forestry and stewardship, et cetera. And so moving forward, starting in 2024, to continue these services and work in partnership with the municipality, a cost apportioning agreement must be entered into between the Conservation Authority and the municipalities that are interested. So at this point, we've started to engage conversations with staff on moving forward with what those agreements could look like, and we'll be engaging with yourselves over the next couple months to get that completed. So moving on to our budget, how do we pay to do these services? So our 2023 operating budget was recently approved at our AGM in January. It encompasses just over $5.87 million in operating, and we worked very hard to ensure that we kept that efficient, and we looked at the challenges that the organization has to overcome, but understanding that the challenges that municipalities are going through as well. We worked to address the expenses and reflect efficiencies. And one of the things that we're very proud of within our budget is new partnerships that come out on a yearly basis, new funding opportunities that we're able to be successful on to be able to work with the community on some of these projects moving forward. As I mentioned, we own trails, we own infrastructure, so we do have a capital budget, and it's a 10-year forecast that we include within our budget package. It is considered a fully funded budget package because it's based on reserves that we have. So there are projects that are not listed in this forecast that we work on an individual case-by-case basis to apply for grants and work with different partners in order to achieve those. They're primarily funded by our reserves, as I mentioned, and we are very creative in trying to find other funding sources. As you'll see here on the screen, we have over 151 projects proposed, with 13 new this year. And I'm happy to say that some of our significant projects, like new signage and information to the public, will be completed later this year. So I always get the questions from council on what does your budget entail? How do I understand how you came up with those figures, and what are the different breakdowns of levy? So that's what I'll speak to in the next couple slides. So as you see here, we have three portions to our budget in relation to municipal levy. The first is a general levy, which is where all 11 municipalities contribute to the one pot. And as you can see, there was an increase of about 4.7% year over year into 2023. We then have two special levies for some of our municipalities. So we have some for properties. So if a municipality would like extra care or additional maintenance on a particular property, then we enter into that particular arrangement. And then we have special levies for water control structures as well. In terms of how the levy is actually calculated, as we have 11 municipalities within the watershed, it's based on an apportionment or modified value assessment. So what happens is, on an annual basis, the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry will provide us with growth assessment data for all of the municipalities based on the previous year. That data will then be multiplied by the percentage of the municipality that relies in the watershed, and that ends up giving us a proportion, which then we allocate across our levy total. So that's how all these different totals are come up with, and that's why there's a variation in numbers as well. So you can see for the town of Greater Napanee that the overall change year over year is just over 3.5%, even though the entire general levy had a 4.7% increase. This is just a summary of how those different levies contribute to the town. So the special levies do not apply to the town of Greater Napanee. And so you are contributing to the overall general levy and the overall projects that impact not only the municipality, but the region as a whole. I always get the question of a multi-year forecast. How are you going to handle some of these challenges moving forward? And so at the request of all of our municipalities, we have put one forward, and I'm pleased to say that we have been following this forecast moving forward, and will continue to do so to the best of our ability in future years. And then looking ahead, one of the biggest challenges for us is all the legislated change under the Conservation Authorities Act, specifically most recently Bill 23, the More Homes Built Faster Act. So that will change some of our services, and we've been working with your staff directly to have proactive communication and talk about what business continuity could look like for the residents within the watershed. So we'll be looking at that over the course of the year. As I mentioned earlier, within those different categories of programs, we will be drafting different agreements that will need to come to staff and to council council for decisions moving forward to support our 2024 budget. So we will be working on that as well. Under the Act, we have to create an inventory of programs and services. An original document was circulated to your previous council. As there have been more legislative change, we will be updating that document this year, and that will be circulated to you as well. So you get a sense of what the state of the union is for the work that we do moving forward. The other piece that we're working on is a long-term asset management plan. So we do have different facilities, infrastructure, trails that we are going to need to look at how we're going to manage those assets moving forward. So later this year, we will be bringing forward information to our board on a financial strategy on how to address that. And lastly, and what I think is most excitingly, is that we have an anniversary coming up this year. So it's our 40th anniversary of Maple Madness. Many of you have probably been to our little Cataraqui Creek Conservation Area. And if you haven't, I invite you to come out. It is a great day, a great several weekends, I should say, to celebrate all things maple. Seems like we're having an early maple syrup season this year anyway. So it's starting in March, which is in a couple of weeks. And if anyone on council is interested in volunteering, either flipping a pancake or coming out to meet your community, you are more than welcome to do so. And we have lots of jobs that we could use the help with. And that's it. So thank you very much for the opportunity this evening, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you. As always, Katrina, an extremely detailed and thorough report. So is there any questions of Katrina? Go ahead, Councilor Bell.
Thank you, through your worship, Katrina. That's this presentation that you just gave is not, unfortunately, is not the one that is on our agenda. Get a copy of this. Do you guys have a copy of this? Have?
I can speak that. Through your worship, we did receive that for this meeting, and I can ensure it is circulated to council for your information.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Calvin.
I get your flip back so I get those dates and times right down. For that.
Sure. For Maple Madness specifically?
Yes.
So it's through you, Mr. Mayor. It's each weekend in March plus March break. Yeah, no problem.
And just to let you know, Deputy Mayor Calver is somewhat of a maple syrup connoisseur himself. So
Excellent. So we hope to see you there.
Working fairly diligently over the last couple of days. So if there's anything, is there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you, Katrina. We appreciate it very much, and we look forward to seeing you in the future. So thank you very much.
Excellent,
We'll look for a
thank you.
motion to note and receive the report from Katrina with respect to this. Moved by Councillor Hicks, seconded by Councillor Shank. Question anywhere further questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, Katrina. Next up is John Hack with respect to the Sierra Planning Management Recreation Master Plan. And I think John's here in the body of the council chambers. Good evening, John. How are you?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Very well, thank you.
Good. John, just to let you know, John is the Director of Sierra Planning and Management. We may recognize him as I think he did present the draft findings for the master plan in November 8th council meeting. So some of us might recognize you anyway. So yeah, go ahead, John.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, staff and members of the public. So we have a presentation that we'll go through, and obviously I'm happy to take any questions arising from it. It's fairly long, so I'll do my best to go through and not dwell on all the details, but just to communicate the highlights of the Recreation Master Plan. Great. So the outline is we'll go through the main elements of the plan and really focus on some of the key recommendations that we've come up with through this process that we've been working on. It's been a very consultative process, but there's a lot of details involved in these kinds of plans in order to make them as practical as possible and to give you the chance to implement them on a range of different scales, from what we call low-hanging fruit, the things that can be done with relatively little investment versus those that require significant planning for major facilities. So in terms of the scope, it is very much all-encompassing. So we deal with everything in the plan, which means it has to operate at a fairly high level. And what we've tried to do is communicate things at a high level, but sort of swoop down into the details of practical recommendations. So there are a lot of recommendations in the plan. It involves everything related to indoor facilities, community facilities, in the various communities, and then outdoor recreation in terms of active outdoor recreation pursuits, all of the parkland and trails, and also the the magnificent waterfront peninsulas that define Napanee are given their due respect in the plan. I think there are other things that need to be put in place to make the best of those, but the recreation master plan is one element. And then taking the view that, outdoor facilities or indoor facilities are just buildings in which services should happen. We try and focus on service delivery and how that can be improved, not to suggest that it's not being undertaken effectively by staff, but there are always opportunities to improve how the municipality involves itself in community recreation. The process kicked off really, excuse me, in sort of May and June of last year. We went through a number of phases. And the reason we do that is to make sure that we have enough communication with the people that count, so that it's not just a consultant's report. It should never really be that. It should be one that has a level of consensus around your table in these chambers, but also based on the input from members of the public as well, so that going forward, the conversations can continue in terms of what the priorities are, but everyone is clear that all of the elements that are in the plan are there because they've either been identified as community needs by us and corroborated through consultation with members of the public and user groups, or they're a list of ambitions, and there's nothing wrong with having ambitions in a plan that maybe go beyond community needs, but get into town development and ambitions in that regard. So we spoke with users, with the community as a whole, and then a range of external consultees as well. In terms of some of the feedback, we had the public survey, 547 responses. So that's a good, very healthy response rate to these kinds of surveys. And that asked everything in terms of people's, particular interests in recreation. If you're someone that doesn't think that tax dollars should be spent on community services of this nature, you can fill out the survey accordingly. And if you are an avid enthusiast of all things recreation, you can do so as well. Then we also had a user group survey, and that's specific to those groups that organize and deliver the recreation services in the building. So hockey, ringette, basketball, whatever it might be, baseball, etc. And we got a number of responses from them as well. In terms of what we heard, fair to say that laced throughout every form of consultation that we had was the reminder to you, I think, as council through us, that an indoor pool is something that is desired, and so we've taken that quite seriously in providing our recommendations, which are pretty nuanced in this regard, and I'll go through those. But beyond that sort of ambitious or aspirational project, and it's a good project, better maintenance of outdoor facilities and parks, improved range of programming, and then a range of other, I think, well identified opportunities that people want to see happen. I'm not going to spend any time on this other than to say that if when you read the plan, council, or the previous council, I should say, did receive a strategic plan, having gone through an exercise and public consultation on that. This recreation master plan fits within that. So it's the next step down, gets into the detail. And as you can see, in terms of the town's overall strategic vision, every one of those goals have a relevance to recreation and culture, and so there's full alignment between these plans. In terms of the guiding principles, just look at the top three there. So strategic investment in recreation infrastructure. You cannot do a recreation master plan that's 10 years in terms of its outlook without being prepared to spend capital dollars sourced from wherever you can, but also operational dollars as well to maintain service standards. But we also recognize that that requirement is also balanced with the growth that the community has, the increase in assessment and the revenues that come in. So there is a balance that needs to be found, but strategic investment is always important. Having said that, having what you currently have in place maintained and as sustainable going forward as possible, that's important. And then thirdly, the real sort of secret sauce in all of this is always effective organization and capacity to manage and provide these services. So those first three guiding principles really lead to the fourth, which is an expectation of high quality services. And also the fifth, which is, effective asset management planning. So it's not just about building new or adding to your range of obligations. It's about taking care of what you have, and you have some very good built facilities, and as well as obviously some great natural heritage. The rest are sort of, I wouldn't say they're ancillary, but they promote the outcome of everything, which is health and wellness on the part of residents. It's good for economic development to keep people and bring new people into the area. And of course, it's good for tourism as well. What that then led to in terms of our recommendations is a series of service directions to try and create some organizing principles about where you can put all these recommendations. So these are buckets of recommendations. So the first one is leveraging partnerships and cooperation with other providers and other relevant institutions, delivering high quality rec facilities, strategic improvement, and then also implementing change by focusing on core services and effective management. And then very importantly, probably one of the most important elements is what we call forward planning for parks and open spaces. And that's the whole conversation about how you make sure that access to parkland and trails is worked into the whole development approvals process when you are faced with applications for development, new subdivisions, high density development, whatever it might be. So that's a very practical part of the plan. Okay, in terms of the recommendations, just to go into the indoor facilities, firstly, and to just address aquatics. And maybe I'll just stop and just sort of indicate that, in all seriousness, we got some very good feedback on the need and the desire for indoor aquatics. We learned of the history of aquatic services in town in previous decades. We also did, if anyone reads the plan, you'll see that we took a regional lens on this. You do not plan for indoor aquatics knowing that your next door neighbor is doing exactly the same thing, because these buildings are above any other, the most expensive municipal assets to operate in terms of recreation. Having said that, so more expensive than arenas. Having said that, the benefit to the community in terms of getting people in through the door repeated times over weeks, months, and over the course of a year, when you actually add up the number of times people use a pool compared to things like arenas, the relative sort of cost per use or cost per visit is often balanced out. So indoor aquatics as an opportunity to meet all of the objectives of the municipality for recreation development are important. The view that we've taken, there was a previous study that was done in 2016 or 2017, I think, that looked at the feasibility of putting an aquatic addition to the Strathcona Paper Center on the southern side of it, where there's currently a small junior soccer field. So to give you our sort of snapshot of our recommendations, you go through a process just to confirm that, because it's not necessarily the case that that's the best location, but I would strongly suggest that probably is the best location in terms of creating the efficiencies and the opportunities to do things like take the heat from the ice and actually use it to heat the pool. These are the sort of things that you try and do these days. And what it really means is, in terms of recommendations, there needs to be a reconsideration of the feasibility of building a pool to give you as council a clear picture of what the current cost would be and what that would mean in terms of where it can go, and to give you some control actually of what that facility would look like. These are not standard things. A pool can be any number of things, can be any combination of tanks, of numbers of lanes, and other amenities. And that all has a cost to it and an operational reality to it as well. So a detailed feasibility study, which really addresses all of these things to give you some real information on cost and operational realities and the technical feasibility of doing it at the Strathcona Paper Center. Because, you know, you do have a building and you have systems, and you need to be able to see whether they can actually work out to operate the site effectively. And then in the short term, and I'll come back to the aquatic recommendation in a moment. In the short term as well, you know, we recognize that staff have been sort of continuing to look at ways in which access to aquatic facilities elsewhere in the region can perhaps be helped. We have to recognize that if you were to develop a recreation center that had aquatics in it, you have to staff it. And around the province right now, there is a general problem in getting qualified staff. So we're talking about the students that become lifeguards. Before they become lifeguards, they have to be trained. And so there are programs such as leadership programs where they have to be in the pool and get to the point where they can then take those courses. So there's great deal of benefit for seeking out ways to promote getting kids into the pools in the region, including pool, you know, the hotels and other possible opportunities. And you can throw in, you know, summer outdoor pools that people have. We see that all over the place as well. As a short-term opportunity, whilst you go through this process of working towards making decisions on whether or not you can support a pool, an indoor pool. I would just point out that the Henderson Pool in Loyalist Township, which has been closed, they do have, I understand, grant money to look at a replacement of that pool as well. Whether that is relevant to Napanee or not is the kind of stuff that you look at in this feasibility study that would need to be done. So I said I'd come back to aquatics, but it's related to the indoor ice. So in looking at the need for ice in the community, the population in town is growing. And so you have to anticipate new infrastructure, including ice arenas. And we look at it again regionally. We look at where everyone goes in terms of the existing facilities. And based on that, and looking at your current sort of service standard, there will be no requirement for a new pad within the term of this plan, which is roughly 10 years. But you have to plan for what will happen in the previous 10 years in terms of having it on the horizon. So around 2036, based on that service standard, there could be a justification for a third pad. Where do you put a third pad? You generally don't build them by themselves. And so you have to get strategic in where you would place it. What that means is that, and the land is available if you take out the soccer pitch to the north of the SPC, to put a third pad on there. Whether it's technically feasible, whether you need to improve the ice plant, all of these things would have to be worked out. But where it comes in terms of the recommendations, that we would be directing the town to look at both the aquatics center feasibility and the future beyond the plan, future of putting a third ice pad in potentially in terms of an overall plan for the Strathcona Paper Center. So just walking it back, that's really the next step, is to look at that site and determine what it's going to look like in 10 years, and how are you going to get there, including the relocation, if it came to it, of some of the soccer fields as well. So that's it in a nutshell, but a focus on that area is important. In terms of the community centers elsewhere, Napanee obviously is recognized as being a significant geographic scale. So our recommendations certainly are to maintain those facilities. We recognize the benefit of some of the spaces in North Fredericksburg and excuse me, South Fredericksburg, as well as Selby. And to that end, though, some of the community halls and their associated outdoor recreation centers need to be more of a focus, some hubs. So that's not to diminish the importance of some of the more outlying areas to the north, perhaps, but designating the SPC and North Fredericksburg and Selby as community hubs for enhanced programming. So that really is where you're going to put operational dollars or capital dollars, put them into those buildings as opposed to others. Outdoor facilities, without getting into too much detail, there is sufficient supply, both in terms of really of all the field requirements, perhaps not in some of the niche sports like cricket or other kinds of things, but in terms of the main ones. Keeping things in a state of good repair is the essence of it. But we did hear significant concern about the premium field, which is at the SPC in terms of its quality. And so a resurfacing of that is probably warranted, or even turning it to field turf. But this is where it then becomes integrated with the other recommendations. That area is going to be under pressure to as a place to do things. And so if you were to invest in soccer field improvements, you don't want to do that and then have to throw away that capital investment. So these are the sort of integrated elements of the planning that have to happen going forward. On to sport courts. We recognize pickleball and the significance of it. So we have some plans in place for that. Also, there is a deficit with tennis, with the loss of some of the tennis courts that have happened. And, some innovations you see in some of the urban areas, people put in things like tennis walls, which is allows you to play tennis without having a partner to play tennis, improves your game. There are some innovations that I think that can be undertaken, and basketball courts, absolutely. There's lots of ways to put in improved facilities, and they will be directly beneficial to a range of youth and adults for that matter in the town as well. Playgrounds, splash pads, and skate parks. On the skate park, maintain the one that's in good condition. Similarly, the splash pads, maintain. Similarly with the outdoor ice. As it relates to playgrounds, we've walked all of them, and there is a need to go through and to do sequential replacement and replace things that people want in those playgrounds. Condition reports have all been done by staff, and they indicate the conditions, so there's no safety issue on any of these. But in terms of getting beyond their service life and replacing them, that should be what we call a low-hanging fruit for the plan itself. In terms of boat launches, again, we've taken the view, and I think members of the public have supported it, that getting effective access to the lake is really important and is a signature element. And so you do have some great boat launches. And I think rather than temporary washrooms and things of this nature in some of the facilities, certain of them, even if they're far from the madding crowd down on the peninsulas, they're a real opportunity for putting in facilities. So things like Sherman's Point, Landing Point is an example there. And generally improving waterfront access strategy, recognizing that tourism is important. You have some tremendous historical assets in the roadways when you drive around. The community will, of course, determine what the the approach and the desirability is of tourism, but recognize here that recreation and tourism, as it relates to access to the water, they go hand in hand. And so there needs to be that perspective taken on board. Parks, open space and trails. Just to sort of get to the key elements there. The feasibility in building the North Riverfront Trail, again, that South Riverfront Trail going up to the rapids and where the new condominium building's going in, it's tremendous. The opportunity on the north side needs to be pushed through. And then above and beyond that, some broader linkages using the new rail path on lands that you own is a great opportunity. And then signage and wayfinding, all of these things can benefit residents and tourists alike. This is more sort of technical in nature, but the official plan, which is currently undergoing review, there's a real opportunity to augment that plan with elements from this recreation master plan, and will then provide good language that the planning department can use to have real discussions with developers about what you want to see happen with respect to trails and parkland developed within subdivisions. And of course, subdivisions are coming. And then there are a range of policy improvements that I think we can speak to, and that staff will take up, including a parks bylaw and an operations and maintenance standards manual. Partnerships, if you read the plan, they're carefully itemized throughout, but one of the key ones is maintaining that partnership with the fairgrounds. The fairgrounds in Napanee is, by comparison to many in the province, a tremendous asset. I mean, very, very special in our view, and there's lots of opportunities to build on that. Just to move on, in terms of this one is really perhaps most important. That is what we've talked about in terms of scale of improvements, undertaking studies, taking on new parkland, all has an operational impact in terms of staffing. And I know that the town has taken on additional staff in recreation and parks over the last year. As the plan is unfolded, I think it's very important to have that review. So whenever a staff report comes forward with taking on major parks or doing major work, the financial implications should also include the organizational implications of these plans as well. And then just finally, making best use of the development charges as a funding mechanism as well. So aligning this plan with any future review of the development charges. So I did warn a long presentation, but hopefully I've given you a sense of the plan. And if I can hand it back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, thank you, John. Does anybody have any questions or comments with respect to John's presentation?
I have.
Go ahead, Councillor X.
Through your worship. On the slide 10, you referenced partnerships with other regional swimming pools. I think it was slide 10. Are you aware of how well this works in other municipalities? Is there buy-in? I'm talking about swimming lessons and a bus to get to the pool, or seniors that want to go swimming. I did talk to a number of seniors that go to Belleville on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
Is it something that's worked in other municipalities that you're aware of?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, it can do. It's patchy, and it requires, it's as successful as people's energy to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
So whether you're in Lees and the Thousand Islands and you're busing people to Brockville,
Okay.
or on this side you're taking people to Belleville, or just promoting it, or just having conversations with those rec departments to find out
Right.
which programs and when the registrations are open, and can there be some allocations for your residents. These are all things that frankly are a little hit and miss, and it depends on the nature of the relationship. If I could just go, so that's kind of practical stuff you can do when considering the development of an indoor facility in Napanee, I think it's important to actually have the conversations as well about who is benefiting from that. In other words, don't assume it's only your residents, and to have those conversations with some surrounding municipalities. If you look at the Quinte Sport and Wellness Center, about 60% of the usage of that facility, so that's rinks and pools, but about 60% is Belleville residents, which should be expected. But that means, 40% are coming from outside of the city of Belleville. And I'm sure that that's expected and it's fine, but it should be factored into the costing model if you can going forward.
Councilor Norrie, go ahead. Yeah.
A great presentation. Just curious, is part of your job to point out maybe areas for grants and that to help us with this? Or is that you just tell us what you think we need or what we want and then we go find the money? Or do you have any avenues to put that in there?
It's a great question. So through you, Mr. Mayor, we obviously try and be mindful of it, so you get a realistic plan from us. We're not going to throw out everything you need to do, which will just tie everyone in knots in terms of capital priorities. But it is important to sort of establish what you think you need, and then what perhaps is an opportunity to get. And then the funding is a next level question. But if you were to do some feasibility work on that aquatic center and what you might do to improve the SPC as a whole, that would, firstly, you would get grant funding probably to do that study. But in terms of capital, you can start to identify what funding could be in place to actually help develop the facility, including an approach to cost sharing. And I know it's difficult business to talk cost sharing with surrounding communities, but we are seeing much more in the province that is happening, because building these facilities is quite expensive. So that's next level, but we're mindful of it in the plan.
Thank you. Great. Is there any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, John. It's been very helpful, and obviously a very long and arduous process to get to where we are today, but I think probably well worth it at the end of the day. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll look for a motion to note and receive the Recreation Master Plan by CR Planning and Management. Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Deputy Mayor Calver. If there's no further questions or comments or concerns, all in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. Next on the list is deputations. Now, I know we have a number of deputations that have been registered for this evening. We'll go through the list, and then if there's any deputations that haven't been registered but we know are out there, we'll give those people an opportunity to speak. So first up would be Tom Touzel and Mike Sewell with respect to the community recreation and trails. Come on up, fellas. I think we all know you, and I think I've just identified you, so I think we've got your names. So come on up and give us your presentation. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I think the last time I saw you, I probably hooked you or slashed you. Tonight I'll be respectful.
There's probably a pretty good chance. Yes, you're right.
Councillors and members of the public, thank you for letting us speak. We're going to be brief and to the point. We represent a small group of motivated, community-minded, active living enthusiasts. We're realists. We're not idle dreamers. And our group began to meet about a year ago, where we started to discuss the revitalization of the rail line within the boundaries of Napanee. And then we were really spurred on by the Recreation Master Plan. I'm not going to bury you in data. I'm hoping to kindle some enthusiasm and leave it at that. I made a written submission to the Recreation Master Plan, was fairly detailed, including some data about the value of the rail lines that are on the ground. And so I'll refer you to that for more details and photos, but I'm happy to send it to anybody who would like it. So tonight's presentation is myself. I'm Tom Touzel. I'm one of the family doctors in town, and Mike Sewell, who is a champion of active living. We have divided it into two portions. I'll do an outline of the project, at least the initial phase, with a focus on the portion of the trail from Dairy Avenue to north of the 401. And then I'll turn it over to Mike in a couple of minutes for a high level view of the concept of active transportation in Napanee and how it could really transform our community. Thank you. Okay, so we see this as sort of a timely endeavor and a confluence of many things, a confluence of ideas, the concepts of healthy living, which are evolving, changing aspirations of residents as new members come to our community, environmental imperatives, which are staring us in the face at all times, the changing face of tourism and what tourists might want, and the needs of the business community. So our goal is to create a true multi-use trail within our town. That's it, fairly simple. So I just ask you to take a look at this picture and I'm going to ask you what you notice. I mean, it's a beautiful picture of a nice place on a winter day, and it's a photo that kind of draws you in, draws you down that line. But I think the most important thing are the footprints on that photo. This is the rail trail in the west end of Napanee that was developed largely by the work of town staff for very little money. And I would argue the cost per footprint is negligible. These are people really like this. I hear about it all the time. You see people parking, people walk their dogs. This was a real win, and it was cheap. This is what we're talking about doing. And who's in favor of this? And we've talked about this, bandied about ideas for several years on this one. But the health community, the healthcare community is absolutely in favor. The business leaders in the community that we've spoken to are in favor. People who've developed and managed trails elsewhere tell us it's the way to go. It's doable, and it's not super expensive. We've spoken to the developers in the area, also in favor, and really everyone I've spoken to. And then when I was preparing the presentation, and I realized that last statement is actually an untruth. I did get an earful from one. And so, I mean, there's no idea that is universally accepted, and whatever, there will always be pushback, and I absolutely respect that pushback, and it makes us, makes our ideas sharper, makes us work harder, and whatever the pushback is, let's take note and work really hard to mitigate for their concerns. That's where I would go with that. Okay, so here's what we're suggesting. This is the rail line within Napanee. It's a gentle curving line at the south end, or the lower end of that photograph is Dairy Avenue. It moves up and crosses Industrial Boulevard, and then works its way over to Camden, and then over the 401. And there is a good bridge over the 401. There is you have access to the OSIM, which is the Ontario help me out here, integrity manual, and that bridge I believe has been studied, but and I'm assuming it has, otherwise somebody would have closed it. So it's there, and I think we need to show some ownership of that bridge before the widening of the 401 occurs, so that its use is guaranteed. So that's one of the imperatives right now. And really our group would like permission to begin the work. I know you can't just do that, but that's where we're going. We'd like to get on with this. It's a short segment. It's doable, and I hope you're with us on that one. I wrote up this slide before I realized you don't make motions right after a presentation. Good idea. But ultimately we're asking for a motion of a strong motion of support to move along with this, and the creation of a working group, not a study group, but a working group to figure out how we could get on with this. I don't see a reason that people couldn't be putting their footprints on this by midsummer. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Mike, and then we can take questions after yours. Yeah, sure.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Tom. Which arrow was you looking at? So I'm Mike Sewell. I've been around for a few years, taught at the high school and been involved in a lot of recreational things here in and out of town and with the school and so on, and the school board. And so Tom made some references here, what we'd like to do. And I think you also have to understand what we're proposing is a phased in project. Obviously, there are certain start-in points that we have to start with. And so having been through this before with several different committees over the last 38 years that I've been here, I've heard the pushback, and forgive us if we're kind of being a little push-y forward in the sense that we'd like now just to sort of take advantage of some of this leverage that we see that's happening. And it's fantastic tonight that we have the conservation people here, the business people are here, the rail people are here. There's a great confluence that we've already heard. And I think the piece that I'd like to touch on right now is a sort of high-level view of what makes this work now, why, and it's in terms of what I call active transportation. And you've probably heard that term. A lot of people may not be familiar with it, but this project, and again, this project makes so much more sense when you understand it under the umbrella of active transportation. It's not just about a trail. And I think it was very eloquently pointed out in the rec plan. And I'd also like to commend the rec plan is awesome. I mean, I've been waiting for years for this kind of document. And at the same time, we now have a strategic action plan. And so in my next couple of slides, I've taken bits and pieces from both because both of them say the same thing. And so in agreeing with these types of strategies and plans tells me that the town is making some really important moves forward. And this is really exciting to me. And I've had lots of high-level conversations with folks in the town as well about the logistical pieces. And I think the pieces are starting now to fall into place. And so when you understand Tom's plan, and you put it in terms of a transportation strategy. Now, many communities have these. And so when I talk about this, and I forgive me for being wordy on this, but these are some of the things to think about. An active transportation describes the use of human-powered forms of travel. So we're talking about, and it describes in there, walking, cycling, inline skating, and skateboarding. If you haven't noticed that this is on the rise here, COVID certainly told us that walking and cycling are booming. And it's not a trend that isn't unlike everywhere in Canada and the United States and in Europe. COVID just seemed to really push it. So here we are, and now active transportation is a thing. And in all of our planning, we kind of touch on it, but we don't. And so I think we need, along with your support tonight, we need support that this is not just about one trail, one place, one time. It's about a strategy that helps move people around this community in and out. And in my world, all things come and go from the center of this community, which is the downtown as the hub. And from there, you start to see all of a sudden this plan makes sense for people and how you move them. And so active transportation can also imply a traveler or a resident is actively making a choice to use a form of travel other than a car. And I know this is going to freak people out, but this is what's happening. And so according to the World Council of City Data, Right now in Canada, 21% of people in Canada move about their day not using a car. 21%. In Europe, that number, now again, I can only, it's a number, but in Europe, it's over 70%. And so my point being is that we have to start understanding that people move without a car. And when you start to understand that, it starts to make sense for a whole lot of reasons. And in fact, some municipalities have also taken the next step in their active transportation strategy and actually attaching a percentage in their strategic objective. We are going to, and I'll use Kingston as an example. They've suggested that by the year 2030, I think it's the year by 2025, they want 20% or more active transportation routes within their community by the year 2025. That's a fairly standard, reasonable sort of expectation. I'm not saying that we have to do that. I'm just saying that's an example. So using the data that was given to us through the rec plan and the strategic plan, these are not my words. I agree with them, but they're not my words. So we know our population is growing in Napanee. That's fantastic. It's growing in lots of different places. It's growing to the east, the west, the north, and to the south. But for the most part, it's happening right here in the urban center, and it's happening mostly around the east and the west end of town. We know that. The town is also getting older. Again, this is not my numbers. The numbers are out there, and it's 65% of the 65 and over population is growing in Napanee, and at the same time, the youth population is getting smaller. That worries me a little bit. And so in attracting and keeping young people to this community, we have to consider the future. And that means a future that doesn't necessarily move by a car. And so we have to start acknowledging secondary routes of access to our subdivided areas to the east and to the west, and how they get through and out of the town, the core, how they move to the north, to the arena, to the new aquatic center that we're going to have up there, and to the south to get to the elementary schools. We have to start thinking in those terms. And so the future growth right now, and again, this is not my numbers, the growth according to our plans is in the urban areas of Napanee. And not that there isn't growth outside of the community or the urban boundary, there is. But for the most part, it's focused in the community, and it's getting older, and they're making choices. And the choices people are making are probably more so related to well-being, health, and wellness, as opposed to some of the traditional thinkings around employment and where am I going to work in a factory. My words here now, I think those days are gone. I think we're now looking at health and wellness and quality of life issues, because that's who older people are and what we think about. So from the rec plan, it does talk a lot about partnerships. And these are the words. And again, I thank the consultants for doing this. This is wonderful work about bolstering partnerships and also studying feasibility of expanding the riverfront north of the Napanee River and so on. And again, in looking at the rec plan, there are 5 identified trails right now in the town of Napanee. 5. All 5 of them are wonderful in their own way, but they go nowhere. We now have to start thinking a strategy to connect them so that we can move people from east to west, north to south, secondary access, all going through the hub, which to me is the Market Square, the downtown, the train station area, Gibbard soon to be, all of those places, and the waterfront ramp and boat area. That is the hub. That's where the action is. And so again, the research that we have is that the older folks like me, we tend to think more about self-directed recreation as opposed to, say, organized sport. I completely agree with that. Some of the organized sports now are not necessarily that strong anymore, but things like walking, hiking, snowshoeing, kayaking, fishing, those are things that people want to do. And that's the age that we have in this community. That's what they want. And we have to find ways to do that. And if we can find those ways that connect more people, that to me is just the best way to go. So these are my words. So here's the 10 reasons why we should consider secondary access. And again, I won't go through them all. Tom has already talked about the health benefits. There's physical and there's emotional well-being, but there's all sorts of other things around building brand for the community, staying on brand for the community, connecting roots to retail, giving equity of access to everybody in this community. We do know that everybody in this town does not own a car. So how do they get downtown? We need to start thinking about that. How do they get to the waterfront where they can do what they need to do, or wherever they would like to go? And I think, again, we've got 5 sort of trails right now in town. Some are really, really good. The one out in Cherrywood, for example, is a wonderful trail. If we could find a way to move people from Cherrywood to the arena, to the downtown, over to Southview Elementary School, not using a car, that'd be fantastic. That conversation is going on in every single municipality in Canada right now. And it's time that happens here in this country, in this community too. And then all of a sudden you understand why Tom's proposal about the trail makes so much more sense. And so lastly here, it promotes future investment. Again, I strongly believe in roots to retail. And having watched our downtown go through multiple phases of up and down and cycling, I'm just saying, imagine if we made some sort of effort to move people secondarily to a car in and out of downtown, or in and out of their business at the courthouse, or in and out of their business with City Hall or the Market Square, or where they have to go. I think to me, that's just a natural evolution of where we're at. And so not only am I proposing then that we look at Tom's proposal, but I'd like to consider some sort of active transportation strategy in this community. I'm not saying necessarily it's connected to recreation specifically. Active transportation is about commuters. It's about commerce. It's about equity of access. It's about connecting the dots. It's about bringing east and west. It's not just about a trail that people ride their bikes and walk on. It's time to start thinking about that. And if you don't believe me, take a walk on some of these trails. I use them all, except the one maybe on Thomas Street. It really is kind of an awkward little spot that you really have to know what's there. But when I look what's going on at the trail, and whoever was behind that trail over by JJ O'Neill, fantastic, just absolutely fantastic. Tom's photo made a great document of that. The other one that's over in Cherrywood, probably people don't even know it's there. It's fantastic. Again, small, short bursts, but they go nowhere. The waterfront trail is marvelous. It's running into some maintenance issues. That's easy fix. But we also need to somehow find a way to get that, to get us all the way up to have a walking school bus. And then we can start looking at e-bikes and equity of access and those folks who are wheelchair bound and wheelbarrow scooter bound in this community. We have to think that way. So anyway, I urge you to think about supporting Tom's motion or our motion. And then also the greater, broader piece around active transportation, either as a plan or a committee or some sort of document. I can offer you all sorts of communities have wonderful active transportation plans to look at as examples. I think we're there. And so, Mayor, thank you very much, Council, for hearing us. I know I'm yappy, but that's what I do.
Thanks,
Harry.
Thanks both Tom and Mike, and I apologize is that I probably should have mentioned it from the start that usually these deputations, we're trying to limit them to a 10-minute time period. We might have got over a little bit there.
Oh
but,
yeah, that's what I do.
it's always good to hear about trails and keep people active in a community, because I think that's important. So is there any questions of either Tom or Mike? I think Deputy Mayor Calver may have a question. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, through your worship. Talk about a couple of different things. You talk about multi-use trails. Great idea. Hard to get a four-wheeler past those rocks. I don't call that too multi-use. Talk about trails that go nowhere. You want to go across the 401 and go nowhere. Might have, to me, I love your idea of the trail going up, but I think it should probably stop about Camden Road. Because once you cross the 401, you're on, you got nowhere. If you want to go on down the trail, eventually you're going to hit where, Strathcona owns the trail type thing, and it's being used all the time. So we've also got a lot of neighbors that have property on either side of that trail. And the idea of running a trail through people's backyards sometimes doesn't always work. But definitely would support something that would run, as far as Camden Road type thing. But it would be nice to see multi-use trails. And when I hear multi-use, I'm thinking, dirt bikes, snowmobiles, four-wheelers, people walking, people driving, people doing scooters, people jogging. Been on lots of those multi-use trails north of here. Doesn't usually work around here though. So that's my 2 cents worth.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing that, I mean, I won't call myself an athlete, but I do like to stay active. And I think it's important that in a community like ours, that we do have to come up with some form of a trail system. If not to take us out of town, but within the community itself. And I think that's a very doable, and I hate to use the term of low hanging fruit, but I think it's a very doable thing. And I think you fellows have identified the fact that we've got a lot of pieces in place already. It's just a matter of marrying them up and putting them together. And I'll make reference to the trail along the river. I mean, very many times I go down there and just sit down and have a cup of coffee because I just like being near the water and watching the falls go. And it's simply amazing the number of people that actually use that trail system. I shouldn't call it a trail system, but to a certain extent it kind of is at this point, right? So I mean, I think it's something that really needs to be looked at. I think it's something that has to be looked at, especially for our community and for the health of our community. I know that we've and you're exactly right, Tom, we're not in a position to make any kind of a resolution tonight. But what we will do, and what I'll do, look for a motion to note and receive if there's nothing else, but also to forward this into our recreation committee that we've just created as well, right? I think it's going to be an integral part of that. And I think it's something that can be done. I think it's something that should be done. But that's why we created a recreation master plan and a recreation a committee to deal with this stuff. Because I think over the years, we may have missed certain parts of our community that I don't think we should miss anymore. So saying that, if there's nothing else, we'll look for a.
I got a question.
Oh, go ahead. Councillor Pennell's got a question. So.
Great. Thank you. Sometimes I just sit back and listen and then it clicks. So sorry about that. Mike, Tom, thank you very much for your presentation tonight. One of the things, whether you stop on this side of the 401 or the other side, that's here nor there right now. But you did mention that this is there'd be steps to this program that you have. And I see that you're willing to look for something tonight to get going. You mentioned that you wanted to get going. What would be your first initial steps to work on the trail, say from Derry to Camden or to the 401 bridge on this side? What are we looking at here?
So the first step would be to get the rails up. And we do have scrap dealers in town, and we just need, and I've actually spoken to one of them, and he said he would take 3 people and pull up the rails and turn it into cash. And that would be your job to decide and negotiate how much cash you're going to get out of it. But I made an estimate of what is there. So there's value, and then we resurface. And we're talking about less than a kilometer. It's not a lot. And I think with community volunteers, we can do this for very little money. So that's really what I won't take out a lot of your time, but I do think that showing ownership of that rail bridge over the 401 is important before the widening starts. Because if that bridge comes out with the widening, it never will go back in. That multi-million-dollar thing. It's never going to happen, and we could voice the cost onto the ministry if the bridge is in use. And there's no question, the idea of extending that trail out to Strathcona is absolutely part of my thinking. I'm almost certain it is the last unconverted section of rail trail in Southern Ontario. It's all there. These trails are all over the place, and that is it's a nice route, and I hope we could do that.
Sorry, just to follow up on that, I do know that if you go west, like from the picture that you took, that portions of that trail have been purchased, and it is private land that you're going over.
It's done, right? Yeah, it's not going to happen. I don't see it happening. I don't see people donating that land back. But I have spoken to lots of people who live along the trail, and actually it improves your land value, and people like it, right? People like access to it. So it goes 100 kilometers. It goes to Smiths Falls, and I've ridden most of it. It's lovely. From our end, I think the idea of bringing people right into the downtown from Napanee makes a lot of business, and that's what we're trying.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick question. What do you resurface it with? Is it asphalt or no? Okay.
5/8 crush.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's
Something,
packed.
something, and that's the way it is. And that needs some maintenance. It would need raking. It needs some maintenance after a really huge storm.
Mhm.
But they talk about upwards around $1,000 a kilometer per year to maintain it. That's the Cataraqui trail system is been up and running for a long time.
Right. Right.
If I may, the in-town portion, obviously we would consult with the town in terms of the spec that they might have required for what they've already previously done,
Right.
so that we conform.
It's interesting because I've watched people on scooters and seniors walking along Richmond Boulevard, not Richmond. Giant Tiger. I actually helped a guy in the middle of an intersection who went off the curb and tipped his scooter. And I think something that accommodates that mode of transportation within town. So I don't know if the crushed gravel would work for that or not. And I know that I'm going to get personal. My own mother quite often in the summer walks from her house on Richard Street to the thrift store. There's no sidewalks. Like you get to a point where there's no sidewalks. And I also had a couple of residents comment on this as well. So I will say that I am in favor of your first phase, at least within town. So
Counselor Shank?
I'm a firm believer in physical activity. The councils in the past have gone ahead and what they did with on the south side of the river with that walk through there. That's what we did there was, I think, was a definite asset to the community, and continuing that on the north side in the future as money allows, I think is an asset. Just keeping the trails in town, not a problem. But I'm going to play the devil's advocate. I'm a farmer here. So I've got millions of dollars invested, and all of a sudden I've got a trail. This is something to look at on the other side. All right. Along there, and there's quite a few farmers along that trail right now. I've got a $600,000 combine sitting there. It is not every professional that's on those trails. All right. And now's the liability. And I'm crossing that trail to access another field. All right. I personally, if I'm that farmer, I would fight tooth and nail not to have that. All right. Just because of the liability alone. And if we have problems other places in town, even with the bylaw and the dogs and this and that, what do you think is going to happen on that trail? And I have a business of that investment. Now you take your total net worth and stick it into a building and say, oh, by the way, the public's going to go by you, 100 feet from you. You'd go, you know what the population is. The 90% are great, and the 10% you go, but that's a major concern. So in town, this side of the bridge, I think the town, John will have to check on this. I am not sure if we own that bridge still or not. But that's something that could be looked into. But if you want to keep it in town, hey, not a problem at all. And you want to make a loop somewhere, not a problem. But if I was that farmer, I definitely would not do it. But it's going to go back to the committee, I imagine, to the recreation committee to do that. And then the committee will look through all the pros and cons and have all the parties, discuss what's great, what's not, and try to come to some type of conclusion. And then away we go. I was just trying to be the devil's advocate on the same side.
But that's good though.
I respect that, Mike. What I would say is those conversations have been had in other communities as well.
Yeah.
It was a long development process, and the trail leads out of Picton. Similar working fields on both sides. And by the way, my daughter and son-in-law are on a working farm in Napanee, and I completely respect the need for security and safety. I would also say the Newburgh Road passes closer to those barns and equipment than the trail would. And I do object to, we need to provide as Mike said, a trail for the people who don't have cars, who don't have access, who don't have resources. And sometimes those people get they do get excluded. And I think there's a fear sometimes. It's a small percentage.
I think we've had
We've got
some,
enough time.
yep. Did you have a comment there, Councilor Martin? Go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'd just like to lend my support to this, mainly, especially over in the area where you're talking Dairy Avenue, Camden Road area. I mean, you got Heritage Park subdivision over there, Church Street, there's condos over there, and even a short distance would give people in that area places to walk, jog, do whatever over there. So I, like I say, I have a great deal of respect for the two of you. And Tom knows that, I mean, I used to play hockey, but now with this knee, I need lesser impact things to do. And
We're going to build you a trail, Billy.
so
Rehabilitation.
anyway, I just want to say that I lend my support to that. And I'm available for volunteering for whatever has to be done too.
Great, thank you. I think at this point, and I thank fellas for coming tonight, and I apologize, we did run on a little longer, but I think it's an important conversation we have to have. One that I think that will continue with Recreation Committee. I think it's important, and I think that it will move on from there. So in any event, I'll look for a motion to note and receive the information from Tom Touzel and Mike Sewell, and ask that council refer the request to the Recreation Advisory Committee. Moved by Councillor Pennell, seconded by Councillor Hicks. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thanks, fellas, and we appreciate it. And thank you for coming tonight. Next, with registered deputations, we have Shaune Lucas with respect to the downtown core and the BIA. I think Sean's here somewhere, or at least he was anyways. There he is. Yeah, come on up, Shaune.
Thank you, your worship. I will try diligently to stay on time. We've had lots
And I will try and watch the time, and we'll
I'm sure,
get through this.
I'm
Thank
sure you will. Thank you.
Yeah.
First of all, I'd like to thank council for speaking on this report that was submitted to council last meeting. And I'd also like to thank Mr. Zetterberg and Ms. Mannion. They took the time to see me at my place of business. It's very hard to get out during the day, and I appreciate them coming down, and I appreciate Mr. Zetterberg having a follow-up conversation with me on the issues at hand. First of all, I want to acknowledge the process for what I'm talking about tonight is very important, and that's secondary deputations. We should always allow people to come to council to speak at any time on any issue. This particular report was published after deputations were required, and sometimes as a public member, you want to comment on something coming forward to council. So please continue that two-tiered process if you don't mind. I have three parts of my deputation. I'll be very brief. Some quick comments about Ms. Hutzler, who made a deputation last meeting. I just want to clear the air. She stated she was never invited to the Downtown Merchants Association. No one has ever been excluded from the Downtown Merchants Association's meetings. Mr. Yeomans has made them available on a weekly basis. Anyone is available at any time, so I'm not sure what happened there. Number two is her comments on the social media report of this thing is, I actually agree with it, and I'll make reference to it later. $111,000 2023 levy was suggested in August of 2022. Then it got tabled. And this proposal then was in addition to the $77,000 that was left over from the 2 years of surplus from 20 and 21. Half that money was spent, half the money wasn't spent, and I'm not really happy that the half the money spent was really spent in good terms. If you look at the history of levies of the downtown district, you'll look past the 3 years that were provided to you. I've got levies here from 2008, more than happy to share with council, but I want to point out to council, nothing since 1978 has changed. The membership hasn't changed. Your membership of the civic addresses are taxed within the BI district. The core values have never changed. Beautification, special events. Yet there's been a dramatic rise in assessment against the BI property owners, especially the last 3 years. And I'm going to remind council, probably 20 years ago, the BIA decided to introduce a cap system. And what that basically means is everyone played within a range, at this amount, that amount. Prior to that, Gibbert's paid probably 47% of our assessment. And now the Gibbert's gone, you could see what would have happened to us if that happened. What the problem has been happening is the escalation of the levy against the designated properties in downtown core. Your base doesn't increase, your core values don't increase, but other services do. And when that happens, it puts a lot of pressure on the bottom and on the top of the cap. And the most significant change that the BIA was experiencing the last 10 years was the cost of overhead, staffing. And unless you supplement that with secondary revenue, it means more money to the designated properties, which I believe is 101. It's finally come out, 101 properties. So I just want to make a little comment that that's been a lot of pressure on the downtown core. You've got here that some things for next year: beautification, marketing, Christmas light displays, community improvement plan, potential farmers market. And there's a suggestion of a special levy. So I'm not really sure what we're trying to attempt. Are we looking to levy the farmers market? Are we looking to levy events that we don't necessarily agree with? There's some confusion with the report for me as to what exactly we're trying to accomplish. The Quinte Regional Marketing Board comment in the report, steps away from downtown marketing. Well, what was spent? The town got levied $27,000 for 16,000 people. The BAA, without the consent of the membership, were levied $26,000. I'd like to see what it was spent on, and I'd like to see a presentation of the membership to see what they found. There was a survey done, one-page document inside here. I'd like to see a presentation. 44 people were surveyed. Who were those people? It certainly wasn't the membership, because when I spoke to the chap from the Quinte Regional Marketing Board, he didn't have the membership list. That's a really insightful insight that I think we need to grasp going forward to see what exactly was surveyed and who were the participants. The BA was charged, it said $24,000 for the service, almost equal to what the amount of the town was. I'd like to see the results. Beautification. The next part of this question, and I'm just going through the report one page at a time, $60,000. If you drill down through the previous BIA budgets year after year after year, the actual numbers are not even close to that. Not even close. Maybe now is the time to discuss whether beautification should be generalized taxation rather than area specific. Not too long ago, and I think Councillor Schenk was on board then, councils made beautification a priority. I can remember maybe 10 years ago, we achieved a 4 or 5 bloom status. We had flowers coming out of our yin yang. A wonderful level to achieve. Are we at that level? Did we drop back? Why did we drop back? What level do we want to attain? Should the BIA be subjected to a different level than the rest of the community? You think of Belleville, you think of Oshawa, you think of all these communities, flowers, beautiful. Somewhere along the line, we've dropped in our standards. And when we achieved 4 bloom status, that was for the entire municipality, just not the downtown core. Is that still the goal for Greater Napanee? Do we have a goal for beautification? Are there other areas of Greater Napanee that are getting beautification services? Are those areas going to be area rated as well? I'd like to see a big picture plan for beautification for the whole community. I don't feel I want to be targeted in a certain area for keeping up standards when the rest of the community is not doing anything. Communities in bloom. The report states no one is interested. Is that a resolution? Was there a meeting? Was there a seconder? And was there a mover and a seconder? I'd like to see actually what that meant. It's my understanding Communities in Bloom is struggling like the rest of volunteer committees in the community, which is volunteerism, getting work done. It takes a lot of time for volunteers. No disrespect to them, but I'd like to know what the status is and who speaks on their behalf. What is the goal for 2023? We talked about Communities in Bloom tonight. Do you have a goal? for beautification throughout the municipality? Or are we just targeting downtown Napanee? We can't, we obviously proved last year we can't manage flowers pre-July, post-October. It's a struggle. We do need people. I've been in communities that have flowers all year round. Niagara Falls, Niagara on the Lake, April, they had flowers up. We have flowers through Christmas. More than happy to be part of a bigger part solution. It would be great to go back to where we were a few years ago with a 4 bloom status. High cost option for beautification, the highest benefit. A question in the report saying, well, what is the highest cost benefit? 22,500 in 2022, the cost of flowers. New bridge on baskets, not BI area, equipment and tools, which are in fact a capital expense. Are we all in for the rest of the municipality? If not, should the BI property owners be totally responsible for decorating the public space in the downtown core? The big bright light show in this report. In the past year, we've had this is probably 4 options we've had that were discussed amongst council, tabled, reported in the media, done whatever. And now that I'm looking at this report, 59 property owners have been targeted to pay $652 per building, or the lights will be moved to Conservation Authority. As an owner of multiple, as a property owner of multiple buildings within that 59 unit block, I can tell you that you've pretty well killed my interest in hosting these lights or the project in general. The report says you have a report saying Conservation Park would be more viable for donations, volunteer assistance, and less staff time. You've already made your decision. If you looked at your report, you've made your decision what to do with big bright lights. We once had not once has a single meeting been held with any property owners to discuss any options of the property lights. That's your prerogative, but it's also the property owner to put up the lights. So again, I'm only reading your report. I've never been involved in conversation big bright lights, and it doesn't appear I'm going to be going forward. I've said several times at council, more than happy to look at what's coming forward. Environmental scan, 1978, 79, no economic offices and little support for businesses. In this report, by the 1990s, there's at least 7 interest groups plus the Chamber of Commerce that I can go to as a property owner, as a business. I have several tenants in my buildings. I don't go to the BI for anything. I go to the county, I go to Pell, I go to everyone else. Well, yeah, the nature of the BI has changed. We're not as dependent on the BIs now as we were in 1978, 79. Dissolution of the BIA, March 2022, your board of management rejected its own budget. Your BIA treasurer, Mr. Yeomans, I thought would be here tonight, but he's not. He raised concerns about town operating proposed budget, yet the town spent $66,000. Previous BIA funds, again, I'll give you the summary since 2008. I have levies going back then. Membership has not changed. Boundaries haven't changed. Supplementary revenue never added. Staffing is the one variable that's changed over the years. Transition budget, very quickly. You stated in your report, beautification costs $11,000, not $62,000. New bridge baskets, $4,000. Not the BI area. New banners, not BI specific. Wireless hanging baskets, that's a capital item, not an operating budget item. Slight difference. 3,000 equipment, not sure what it's for. It should be capital expense. Guitars and cars, just to note to council, the previous chair that presented that proposal, that was for $17,000. You end up not even doing it, and you did a shopping party for $5,500. Remembrance Day, $500 came out of the BA budget. Is that a BA expense? Auditor accountant fees, $3,000. I think this town owes it to the BA taxpayers to have, as by constitution, another meeting of membership to review the unaudited finances before they come back to council in August for approval. We're paying a fee for that. You owe us another meeting to review because it's still BA money. 2023 events. I'm a little confused. We've got Earth Day, indoor market, music in the park, parade of lights, trunk or treating, culture days. Are you expecting the BI area to pay for that? I'm not quite sure reading the report. Downtown Merchants Association. I don't speak for Mr. Yeomans, but you do have had an interest group. One counselor at the Meet the Candidates meeting at the Merchants Association meeting in October actually acknowledged the Merchants Association. You have people willing to step forward, willing to host events at no charge membership. Will it be done while being levied? Probably not. I don't think so. Social media. Ms. Hustler pretty well covered that area, and I agree with most of her points, being very objective. The town needs to harness the content coming out of all businesses and push it up the limits. We have a tremendous wealth of business people downtown doing their own social media. The game has changed. We can't do what they're doing. Everyone is feeding off of everyone else. Downtown survey. I'd like to see a formal presentation, what they'll survey. I'd like to learn from what I paid for in the survey. What did they come up with? I think it's very important that we all see that. Summary. I do appreciate council's motion for seeking out a survey question of all the membership. And I'll tell you, it's probably the first time in a long time, a lot of people have been contacted that have never been contacted. So I do appreciate that. I will respect the opinions given to this council by the membership and the results, as long as everyone is contacted accordingly. I also like the advisory committee structure. We used to do this in the old days, the old councils. We had committees of council. I think that's a great idea for all of the things. And I'm not going to repeat my previous comments I made because of this report, but I do have some additional concerns. What is the vision statement and goals for beautification in general for Greater Napanee and community bloom status?
Just
Yes, sir.
give you the heads up, Shaune, we're getting into that 14, 15-minute period. So
My apologies. I'll end it there. Mayor Richardson, thank you for the time to speak. I hope I didn't repeat myself, and I just wanted to highlight, with all due respect, what was presented at council, and looking forward to the advisory committee findings. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Shaune. Is there any questions or comments for Shaune? Seeing none, I just want to thank you, Shaune. I know you're very passionate about the downtown and have been very passionate forever and ever and ever. And I don't want to repeat myself either, but it is a priority for this council to try and rectify any kind of problems or issues that we've had with the downtown. I think it's important for the downtown people, no matter what we call it, no matter what we have. I think it's important for us, and it's important for the community, important for the downtown. So our first step, and I know you're very well aware of it, our first step was to send the letters out, which will be going out. If they're not out now, they'll be out very smartly.
Through your worship, I received my first response back today, so.
There's what they look like right there.
Yeah,
They
so the
came out.
process is well underway, and I think it's the very first step as to how we're going to go about this. I think it's an important step that we hear from everybody, and that's what we're going to try and do. And in the interim, or the meantime, we're going to obviously, as you say, we've got an advisory committee that will get us through until we establish which direction we're going to go with it. But I think it's important that we get those letters back and we hear from everybody that they were sent to. So, but I thank you for coming, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, members. Thank you.
Next up, we are, and it was brought up by Shaune that we still do the process of unscheduled. Oh, sorry, we should have a motion to note and receive. So I'll look for a motion to note and receive. Thank you, Jessica. Moved by Councillor Norrie, seconded by Deputy Mayor Calver. Any further questions or comments or concerns? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Just to pick up, we still do have the process. I think it's important that we do hear from people that show up that want to have their voices said. Unfortunately, like I say, we can't give you the full 10 minutes. I think according to our bylaws, we're in the 3-minute range, but we're going to try and honor that and try and get as much out of you as we can right now. So I know that we have, I think Shaune said that Ron Yeomans, he was first up, but he's not here tonight. I don't see him. Moving on, we have David Milligan. So come on up, Dave, and just feel free to tell us what you have to tell us. Thank you.
I'll keep it pretty brief. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I guess I'd like to introduce myself. I am the farmer who will fight tooth and nail, as Mike spoke about. I'd like to thank the town council for giving me a chance to speak on this trail matter tonight. Along with my father, Wayne, who's in attendance here tonight, and my cousin, Mark, we own and operate Mill Spring Farms. My son, Jack, and daughter, Abby, are here tonight. They would be the 5th generation in our family to take care of this land that we call home. We strive to be excellent stewards of the land and produce high quality milk and food for our local population. On our farm, we take care of 200 head of Holstein cattle that produce 1.5 million liters of milk annually, which gets mainly processed at local facilities such as Wilton Cheese, Ivanhoe Cheese, Reed's Dairy, among many others. We also grow corn, soybeans, wheat, barley, and oats, which helps to fill our grocery shelves. We support several local businesses as well as donate to local food banks and the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario. This abandoned rail bed falls within 100 feet of many of our buildings that house animals, feed, crop, and farm machinery. It is much closer than County Road 1. Throughout the year, we cross this rail bed multiple times an hour, daily, nightly, with heavy, wide machinery. We have invested millions of dollars into our farm to be able to produce high quality products that our population raises their families on. Biosecurity that is required with producing milk and food would all be lost as a result of this trail, as well would the safety of our animals. We all know that not everyone would stay within the trail limits, as was spoke about with the 90 and 10%. With our close proximity to town, we already deal with trespassing, homeless people setting up tents and camps on our property. We've dealt with vandalism, fires, and theft already. Inviting several more people access to our property via this trail will only make these issues worse. Who is going to be responsible from the town in dealing with these issues and protecting the local businesses that are affected? Not to mention the liabilities and massive costs to get all the land fenced, gated, and maintained afterwards. Another local dairy farmer who will be negatively affected by this trail development is Rob Sutton, who is also in attendance here tonight. He has a few words as well about this trail. Rob farms just east of our farm, where the majority of the abandoned rail bed falls within Stone Mills Township. After speaking with Jason Sands, who is the planner for Stone Mills, I learned that there has been no communication received on their end about any possible development of the abandoned rail bed. The Stone Mills portion is privately owned and being used heavily by industries such as Strathcona Paper Mill. This trail would ultimately lead to nowhere once it hits Stone Mills Township. Upon decommissioning of the rail line by CN, the Stone Mills Township offered the rail line to adjoining landowners who were willing to purchase the abandoned rail bed and take over the liabilities associated with it. I don't know why this wasn't the case within Greater Napanee. One of the other major concerns is the aging, decaying bridge that was spoke about that would be used across the 401 highway. The liabilities associated with this are something I would not support as a taxpayer of this town. While our family is totally against the trail running through our property, I could not agree more with Tom and Mike, along with the town of Napanee, on developing a robust trail system within our town limits. The master plan outlines this well. The recreational master plan outlines this well, falling short on addressing our aging population needs, as well as being inclusive to accessibility needs for others, as was discussed. With this in mind, we have submitted a letter of intent to purchase the abandoned rail bed that passes through our farm to the clerk of Napanee. The town could use these funds to connect and develop some of the existing trails within town limits, such as the waterfront trail, which would highlight our beautiful downtown district. These trails, properly designed, would better serve all residents of Napanee, which I feel is of utmost importance, not only a select few. thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Dave. Is there any questions of Dave? Seeing none, I think in all fairness, we're going to ask that your comments be forwarded to the Recreation Committee as well. Should we ask Dave to send them by email, or are we good with what we have, Jessica?
Through your worship, if Mr. Milligan wants to send them by email, I can ensure that they are passed on to the committee. We also have the minutes of tonight's meeting that can be forwarded to them.
Okay.
We'll leave that up to you, Dave.
I can leave these with one of you guys, Mike or whoever, any counselor, if that serves well. Okay, if I leave this with you, Jessica. Sorry, Terry, but I didn't know until on my way here tonight that Rob has some additional information regarding Strathcona Paper Mill and kind of clarify some of these things. If you would give him a minute.
That's fine. We're going to give him an opportunity. Dave.
Okay,
No
perfect.
problem. So
Thank
my
you.
thanks. We'll look for a motion to note, receive, and to forward the information that Dave has presented to us onto the Recreation Committee as well, Advisory Committee. Moved by Councillor Norrie, seconded by Deputy Mayor Calver. Any further comments or questions, concerns? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Rob Sutton, come on up, Rob. Again, I'll just remind you, we can't give you as much as we give a lot of other people, but
That's
I'm
all right
sure,
by me.
I'm sure you will hit all
I'm
the
a
notes
farmer,
there,
not a
right?
doctor or a teacher, and good speaking, so.
Go ahead, Rob.
Well, just same concerns with Dave and his farm. We own probably about 3 kilometers along the trail from the Stone Mills side to Strathcona. And we work a contract with Strathcona. They have tractors going down the rail bed every day. And we have spoke with Strathcona, and they said there is no way that they would ever allow a trail through where these tractors and what we use, and several dump trucks in the summer when we're hauling the paper waste and stuff like that, just liability reasons. So my concern is, why bring that trail down any further than Camden Road? Because it's gonna dead end, and usually a dead end trail, people find their way around the gate at the end of it. We used to deal with lots of 4-wheelers and dirt bikes that used that rail bed when it was first abandoned years and years ago, and they ended up at our place and through our crops and through our fields. And same thing, we've had our 4-wheelers stolen. And just like, I'm all in favor of recreation on that, but in town is a great idea, but to further any further towards Stone Mills, there's no possible way that it'll ever will connect with the trail on the east side of Strathcona. So that's about all I have. So
Great, thanks, Rob.
Thanks
Just
for your
to
time.
see if there's anybody has any questions or concerns. Just hang tight, Rob. I don't know if there's any questions, but does anybody have any questions of Rob? What would his statements? Seeing none, thanks. That's great. We'll look for a motion to note and receive the comments of Rob Sutton with respect to the trail system. Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Hicks. Any further comments or questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you, folks. Is there anybody else that wants to speak to us tonight? Seeing none, we'll move on. We'll clean up some more stuff, then maybe we can have a break, Jess?
Sure.
Okay, we'll just clean up a couple of housekeeping matters here, and then we'll have a quick break. Adoption of the minutes. We'll look for a motion for the adoption of the minutes with respect to the special session of council, January 26, 2023, and the regular session of council, January 31st, 2023. That the minutes be adopted as presented. Moved by Councillor Shank, seconded by Councillor Hicks. Questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Correspondence for information. We have a recommendation that the correspondence for information dated February 14th, 2023 be received. We'll look for a motion there, and then we'll discuss whether there's anything anybody wants to talk to. Moved by Councillor Shank, seconded by Councillor Fennell. Is there anything anybody wants to pull out of there to speak about or have conversation with? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. And Well, let's do correspondence for action, then we'll take a break. We've got correspondence for action from the National Wear Red Proclamation request. We have a recommendation from the Heart Disease. And it's a fairly long recommendation. I think everybody has seen it in their agendas. We're going to need some action with respect to this. It was late coming in, so what we're going to do is if we're going to approve this, it'll be good for the following years. So recommendation is that the heart disease is the #1 killer of women worldwide and leading cause of premature death for Canadian women. The Canadian Women's Health Alliance is an organization of volunteer health professionals and patients working hard to improve women's health and heart. And whereas Wear Red Canada Day is celebrated annually to raise awareness for all Canadians, but especially Canadian women, to be mindful, curious, and proactive of the management of the heart, health, and wellness. And whereas we want to see better prevention, diagnosis, care, and fewer women dying prematurely from heart disease, now therefore be it resolved that the town of Greater Napanee hereby proclaims February 13th, 2023 to be recognized as the National Wear Red Day in the town of Greater Napanee. So we'll look for a motion. Moved by Councillor Shank, seconded by Councillor Hicks. Is there any further questions or comments with respect to that? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. And I think at this point, maybe what we'll do is we'll take a break for 10 minutes. So we'll see you back shortly, folks. Thanks a bunch.
My God.
Thanks. Welcome back, everybody. Sorry, we have one more correspondence for action, which I should have cleaned up before the break, but we're going to do that now. We've got some correspondence from Loyalist College, who's looking for support with respect to their apprenticeship programs. I know that everybody has probably read it or seen it. So what they're looking for is, we got a recommendation that council receive for information correspondence from Loyalist College, and further that council authorize the mayor to provide a letter of support for the college apprenticeship programs. We'll look for a motion, Councillor Hicks and Deputy Mayor Calver. Is there any questions or comments with respect to the correspondence from Loyalist College and thoughts with respect to whether we support their apprenticeship programs? Yep, go ahead, Deputy Mayor Calver.
No, I think it's great that council does, show support for this program, because I know being in these trades as well, there's nothing really around here, and it's very expensive to go off to trade school. You got Ottawa, you got Toronto. If they could get something going here more local, I think it'd be a great thing for the community for sure.
Yep, great. I agree with you. I think it's important to our community and for the area. So any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Opposed, motion is carried. Staff reports, the recreation master plan. Do we have a staff member that's going to speak to this? Come on up, Annie.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have nothing more to add at this time, but I'm available for questions.
Great. Is there any questions for Annie with respect to the recreation master plan? Yeah. No. Yeah, Councillor Shank, go ahead.
I'll just make it very brief. It's a huge document. There's a lot of excellent information in this. All right. Pertaining to, what the average, it gives a lot of data, but there's a huge amount of data to consume. I see some errors in certain points, but what I'd like to do is like to receive it. I don't want to endorse it right now for their approval, but I'd like to see the recreation committee, all right, that you're setting up, let them go through it, because I don't want to go ahead and approve it and then go ahead and say, oh, well, we approved that whole, like the laneway, you know what I mean? The trail that there's some proponents that are totally against that. And then there's some that are for it. So if we give the committee and Brent and Annie to kind of go ahead and say, okay, what will work, what won't work in it. I don't want to be getting tied to something and saying, yeah, we have to do that. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of points in here, because there's one on page 36. If you look, I see some errors on this. It says, and I have no idea why it was even in. Here we go, page 31, page 31. And it says here, farms with residences, and it was highlighted in that area. Well, I own a chunk of land in a certain area that showed, but it wasn't, you know what I mean? There's residents on that, because I know I live there, but it's not, it's a little minute little problem, but there's a lot of other data in here. What's the average basically income and what's the areas for it? So there's a lot of really good areas, but I'd like to see the committee give the opportunity to kind of cruise it first and bring it back, because it's been a while since we had this anyway. So why not wait an extra month for them to kind of look at it and go from there? Not unless there's some grants that you're applying that's going to throw that all out of whack. Nope. Yes, John.
Annie,
John was just looking at me like he wants to answer. Please say something to me, John.
Through your worship, to Councillor Shank, I think this document isn't a prescriptive document that says I'm going to go through 86 pages and we're going to start doing things. I think what it does is set stages, it paints themes, it connects things to other plans where we can say, here's a chunk of data that we think is important. Because at the end of the day, by approving this, you're not approving us to go and do a bunch of work. We would bring things back incrementally that line up with this plan, that line up with the strategic plan, that line up with things that we do in the official plan. So you're not approving a bunch of work to be done. You're approving sort of the overall theme, and we would use this as another dot that we would link together to do other work.
Okay, so
If
therefore,
that makes sense.
Okay, so this is not like as per Bible that this is, I'm not tying myself into this like a legal document saying thou shalt do this.
Because the big thing in here, there's places in here where you would have to spend money and there's nothing that we've budgeted in this document for this. So that, your first step is, where are you going to spend it? Where are you going to get this money?
Yeah, because the only reason why I saw that, sorry if I can continue.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
The only reason why I saw this is because at North Fred Hall, it says the condition is poor and South Fred is fair. And I went, well, great. That's news to me that South Fred is in excellent, actually better shape than North Fred is. And I'm going, okay, that's a new one, but that's.
And to be honest, you'll see things in here. I think there's mention in the high level report about South Fred that may contradict what staff had said in terms of the building conditions. So, right, there's some reconciling because you've got different groups of consultants that have looked at things through different lenses. And what our job then is to do is to put that together, bring it to council, say, how do we stitch this together into a plan? Which is going to take some time.
Just following up on what Mike said. And maybe Annie, I don't know if you can answer this, but maybe John can. Why are we referencing farmland at all? Why it's, to me, farmland, whether or not there's a reference or a residence on it or not. For instance, we have 80 acres, it's zoned agricultural. We don't farm it. We allow people to farm on it. But I don't want it on a plan where somebody could look at this and go, oh, well, there's some open land and look, somebody had a cook fire here where they took the grandkids out and did hot dogs. I don't want that referenced anywhere in an official plan that, and I'm sure that Mr. Shank, Mr. Milligan, Mr. Sutton, Mr. Kaiser don't want, just to name a few, their properties indicated on the plan. It should be private property. Is that a fair question, a fair assumption?
I was going to say, I think John is still here. So why don't we bring John back up? He was the one that was the author of the report. So come on back up, John.
It's just a mapping thing. It's a layer thing. We produce various layers based on the information that we get. Sometimes we want to know where residences are, meaning, a large land holding that may or may not be a farm, but is still an estate, residential, has a house on it. And we want to see where people are because we try and understand the nature of the population. Are they older people? Or and a lot of that is, if it's very, very small, it gets suppressed anyway. And sometimes we want to know what the walkability is to existing parks. Now, in rural areas, it really doesn't matter because no one's holding a standard of being able to get to a park within half a kilometer. So I'll have to have a look at it, but it's not an issue for us at all to remove layers, if that's easier. I think the thing I don't understand from what's been said, though, is if we're identifying private property, we don't have to be specific about it, so we can take it off, but it shouldn't be construed that that land is accessible in any way, because all we do is we say, here's public land. So if there's a confusion.
Okay, so you're
then
highlighting, I see that where it's public land,
Yeah,
which, okay, so Springside Park is public land.
yes.
My
we-
front 40 acres are not.
So we're absolutely not advocating that people walk onto your front lawn and maybe it's colored green, a different kind of green, but well, it's a gray. Yeah, we'll take it off. It's just a layering thing.
Or do it all in red.
Or yellow and black stripes.
Okay,
Yeah, well, we can remove that.
That's fair enough. That
Yeah,
answers.
I'll
the
just take a
question.
note.
And just further to what John said, your worship, I do understand the purpose of the plan. So if developers or businesses are coming to town, we have a document that we can show them that.
And it really is.
It's in
just
the
a-
works.
It's a guideline.
It's a guideline.
We don't have to abide by everything that's in that plan because, I mean, as Mr. Pitson said, ultimately the decision is going to come back to council to say whether we can afford it or not, right? And that is going to be the real, I shouldn't say the real kicker on it, but that's going to be one of the most important things that we're going to have to deal with, right? So I think it's just all the information that was gathered from the reports, from the surveys and everything like that have been accumulated. We put out there as to what the community was looking for, what they were hoping for. But once again, it's simply a guideline. It's not the Bible, right? So, however, have we got a motion on this yet, Jess? Okay, so we haven't got a motion. If people feel more comfortable by bringing it back with a couple of the tweaks done, we can most definitely do that. I'm thinking, John.
Through your worship, yeah, we can make any changes to it. The only thing I would just observe is just what Mr. Pinson had said, is that the document itself is intended to be adopted, frankly, before it goes to a rec committee, because that's implementation. So if you got an implementing group that's not been party to the process, may have councillors, may have lay people involved, that's not the rec master plan process, it's implementation. So my advice, and obviously it's just me as the consultant, is you need to endorse this before it goes to the rec committee. If you want to have some errors of fact or interpretation that we can take on board in the next couple of weeks and clean that up, happy to do that. But I don't think this should be pushed to the rec advisory committee before endorsing. That's not the process.
Councillor Shank.
I will be in favor of doing the approval, but on the one page where it was asterisked about the trails, let me just see if I can find this again. Where's the trails? Oh, there's a lot of pages here, but if it says, if you can do it to the south end of the bridge, that it stays within town limits, and take that goes to Strathcona. If you can take that part out of it, that just very easy to delete it, then approval, because I'm sorry that if you're a proponent against it and you see this passed, first thing that you're going to think is that you're agreeing with that principle if it's going all the way to Strathcona.
And I understand that, I get that. However, again, this is not the Bible. This is just a guiding document. And so should we restrict the document and send it to the Recreation Committee knowing we've restricted it at this level? Or should we allow it to be broad and then send it to the Recreation Committee for further discussion to establish whether or not it's functional or feasible? And I know exactly what you mean, Mike.
Yep.
But those are what I'm struggling with is that, do we leave it broad enough so that it goes to the Recreation Committee? They can establish functionality to that.
Yeah, I'd just like to listen to what Brian has to say.
Yeah, go ahead, Deputy Mayor Calver.
No, I've already had those discussions and talks, and it's a guideline. Ultimately, it's going to be up to the Recreation Committee to come back to council with anything we want to do or not do. Everything obviously has a cost factor. I mean, we can put all the fancy things we want in this recreational approval plan. It comes down to affordability and doability. I mean, I'm okay with everything. I looked it over. I looked at all the wrong plan earlier when I sent out an email to Jessica and everybody, but Councillor Cornell got me on the straight and narrow. I've glanced through it. There's nothing there. Like I say, that rail bed one that goes to Strathcona, well, we know that's never going to happen anyways. So it's just a guideline from what I've been told. And if it changes at any point, Mike.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm okay with it the way it is, and we get it adopted, get it moving, and get this committee together, and let's see what we.
Okay, so we have a staff recommendation that council received for information, the Community Corporate Services Recreation Master Plan report. Further, that council endorsed the Town of Greater Napanee Recreation Master Plan 2023-2033, and further, council refer to the Recreation Master Plan to the Recreation Advisory Committee as a guiding document. Moved by Deputy Mayor Calver, seconded by Councillor Hicks. Is there any further questions or comments? Call the question, all in favor? Opposed? The motion's carried. Legislative Services Encroachment Agreement, Stelarchuk 397 Hoff Street. Is there a staff member going to speak to this, or do we need a staff member to speak to this? I guess this would be yours, Jess.
For your worship, I have nothing to add to the report. I am here for questions. I will also note that the applicant is here in the room if there are any specific questions council has for him.
Okay, we've all had an opportunity to see the report. I guess what we'll do is we'll put the motion on the floor and then we'll have a conversation. Moved by Councillor Pennell, seconded by Councillor Nori. We've all had an opportunity to read the report and see the report. Do we have any questions or comments or concerns with respect to the report? Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Pennell.
Thank you. I just have a question for the applicant, if you don't mind. Looking at the survey, I see that your existing structure is encroaching anyway. So my question is your thoughts of extending the porch, I guess you would call it, the full width of your residence. Are you going to be closing that in as well? No, so it's just going to be the porch. Right. Okay. Great. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion is carried. 10.3 endorsement of the advisory committee terms of references and mandates. Now, what I think we're going to try and do is do this all under one motion. If there's something that somebody wants changed or manipulated or maneuvered, we'll pull that out and speak to it. Am I correct with that, Jess?
Just for everyone's awareness for procedural clarity, there's the main motion to receive and adopt all of these as presented. If there are any specific amendments that a councillor would like to propose, that should be done as an amendment to the main motion. There can be many amendments. We can vote on them all. Council can vote on them all individually and then finally vote on the main motion. Hopefully that process is clear.
So we're looking for a motion to receive the information. Yeah, well, we have the motion in front of us. So moved by Councillor Shank, seconded by Councillor Martin. Is there any questions or comments? Seeing none?
This is where you say the thing.
Okay, yes.
I think we
Your
have a
worship.
question or comment. Go ahead, Councillor Hicks.
Madam Clerk, if you would be kind enough on the Downtown Advisory Committee, in terms of reference to change the wording to monthly meetings as opposed to bi-monthly. That would be wonderful.
So to be clear, you are requesting to amend the main motion to adjust the terms of reference for the Downtown Advisory Committee to amend section 6 to read that their committee meetings shall be scheduled monthly rather than bi-monthly.
Exactly so. Thank you.
No.
So you're the mover on that motion.
And we need a seconder on that amendment.
We do.
Seconded by Councillor Shank. So we'll get a vote on the amendment first.
Yes.
All in favor of the amendment? Opposed? Motion's carried. Now we'll need the vote on the original
Yes.
motion.
Which
Unless
already
there-
has the movements, unless there's more amendments to
More
be made.
amendments that have to be made. Seeing none? All the vote, all in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Growth and expansion, Blue Earth Renewable Energy Storage Project request. That would be Michael's. Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Worship. So this was before council it's two or three meetings ago now. We'd put off making a decision until we received confirmation that Blue Earth provided at least a conceptual site plan to staff for review, and that Blue Earth responded to the resident questions that were held at that were received at their public meeting that was held prior to the new year. We've received both. So within the council, within the agenda package, there is their conceptual site plan identifying where the containers would be located, as well as like a planting plan, although not very comprehensive at this time, plantings that they're committing to. I would note that we would still need to go through a detailed site plan review process. So this is very conceptual, high level. There would still need to be very much the nuts and bolts, detailed design and review that would be forthcoming. But the primary concerns of staff were, how can we really shield this from residents in the area? How can we get adequate buffering, and how can we locate this on the site such that it's going to be as non-intrusive as possible? And I think with the site plan within the agenda package, I think Blue Earth has kind of hit the nail on the head there, given the constraints on the site, given the existing solar panel infrastructure that's already on the site. This is really the last portion of the site that could be used, and they're keeping it as far away from those neighboring properties as possible, and enhancing existing tree lines and adding additional rows of plantings to help screen the facility. I believe there's a representative from Blue Earth on the call here. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, or the representative from Blue Earth would likely be able to answer them as well.
Yep, thanks, Michael. And I believe, Matthew Allen from Blue Earth should be joining us, or is with us now. Am I correct?
I'm on the call here.
Great, thank you, Matthew. Is there any questions of either Michael or Matthew with respect to this? Seeing none? Oh, Mike, yeah, go ahead, Councillor Shank.
I'm not 100% positive, but if they have contacted any of the people that were at that public meeting, all right, that definitely weren't happy with this, and that was the neighboring properties. Did they contact all them individually?
Michael or
I'll defer to Blue Earth on that question.
Yeah, go ahead, Matthew.
Hi there. So in regard to contacting landowners, we did send them the meeting minutes from our previous community meeting, and we've been working with through some email communications with a few specific landowners on a few items that were in there. So we have sent that back. We haven't reached out directly to all those people at this time, but we're hoping that providing them that feedback gives them an opportunity to reach back out, and we do plan to have more engagement in the future.
Me, I'm just my own personal opinion. It's just, I'm only one member of council, is that when you've got Little Creek Street, you can see this is all visible. All right. And you're talking, if I remember correctly, there was not like 90 sea cans that you could see. I think there was 90 proposed here. Is that correct?
Ballpark, yeah.
Ballpark 90 sea cans. So it's going to be a while before this is going to be shaded in or whatever. And I had mentioned to some of the other members that are on council now about this meeting, and some of the people that went to that meeting were very upset that, they never were contacted afterwards for any of the questions, you know what I mean, or, that they had. There was never any answers, never any feedback. And the last meeting I went to that they came here and did the proposal, I said, make sure you contact those individuals that live close to that so you can solve any of their concerns that there was. So they're still based on the comments they had from the public meeting, but due diligence is that they didn't phone those residents. They only went from what they got at that public meeting. And a lot of people on council here didn't even know about that meeting. And the only way I found out about that meeting was one of the residents had phoned, are you aware of this meeting that they had at the Strathcona Paper Center? So as far as I'm concerned, because of the visibility, and it's very hard to keep that enclosed, and the lack of due diligence on their part or whoever they hired to do it, I'm not in favor of. All right. At the other, at Tura, it could be very easily hidden. I was in favor of it. That's a zone for that and everything else. But because of the lack of due diligence on their part, not in favor of it.
Okay. I guess, first of all, does Matthew or Mike, do you want to comment on any of the comments of Councillor Shanks?
I'll defer to Blue Earth if they have any further comments.
Well, we appreciate that feedback, and I do agree that we have lacked to directly contact those landowners. So we've been working to, I guess, provide them with a more fulsome plan for this development to answer their questions. We did have quite an exhaustive list of questions, and we wanted to address those in the most wholesome way possible. So while you are correct that we haven't been able to have that exact outreach to each individual that attended the meeting, but we did provide them with answers to the questions that they did present, and we look forward to having that conversation with those individual landowners about their concerns, hoping that the minutes that we provided them satisfy the majority of their needs, and these updated plans as well as the planting program can address that. We are committed to hearing their feedback and working with the community on this.
Councillor Shank?
If I'm proposing
yeah,
something like this, I would go ahead and, you know, there wasn't a great number of people that went to that meeting. So these are the area concerns. These are the adjacent landowners. These are the ones who are going to be affected of it. All right. So therefore, if I'm doing my business correctly, I would contact those individuals. They did not contact those individuals. They just went on a broad-based approach that somebody went ahead and did and came up with. Those are the questions, these are the answers that I had. Since they did not do their due diligence, I'm personally not in favor of it. You do your homework, you get it done. If you don't do your homework, you don't get it.
Okay. And I'm not sure, I guess I could ask, legislatively, have these people fulfilled requirements that they need to fulfill with respect to this, Mike? And I don't know if you can answer that question, but I'll ask it.
Your worship, we're intersecting with this process because they're looking for a support resolution to go along with their application. Legislatively, I don't know what's going on in the background, what the approval authority is going to be looking for ultimately of Blue Earth for this proposal and for this project. Honestly, I can't answer that question, so I don't know what processes fully have been undertaken by Blue Earth, but if Blue Earth does have a comment, then I would welcome that at this time.
Matt, did you want to comment on? I guess what we're here to decide tonight is, and correct me if I'm wrong, just from memory, is that they were looking for a letter of support with respect to this project, and obtaining that letter of support wouldn't necessarily stop the process going forward, but it's conceivably, I suppose, would help.
Through your worship, that is correct. Yes.
Okay. I just had to remind myself as to where we are with this process. So is there any other comments or questions? We have a recommendation. I mean, we can put this to a vote. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, through your worship. Chief, got a question for you. It wouldn't be a battery storage night without a question of, since we started this process and now that we can see a site plan, have you any further concerns regarding this with the placements, accessibility, or anything else that I might be forgetting?
Through the chair, no, we do not.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, Deputy Mayor Calver.
Thank you, Your Worship. I got to set with Mike on this one. We knew nothing about, as council, we knew nothing about this meeting to the public until the night it was happening. I had a member reach out to me, or one of the neighbors reach out to me to see if we were going. I'd love to have went because I didn't know about it, but I already had plans that I couldn't get out of. It just seems to me like, and as of yesterday, the one neighbor, his questions haven't been answered or talked to yet. He was at that meeting, asked questions, and yesterday, the email that he sent, he hadn't heard back. I don't, if you're like Mike said, you do your homework, you get a passing grade. You don't do your homework, it's hard to do that. I just don't, I'm not comfortable with it. And the fact that it is close proximity to a stream right there behind it, and the land does slope to the stream, like there's just not enough information for me. That's my 2 cents worth.
Okay, I just want to get my, if nobody else has anything, I'll comment is that the letter of support, are there still hoops whether we issue this letter of support or not? I'm guessing that the project will still be going forward if they're successful with respect to the project itself, right? And are there still hoops that have to be jumped through in order to make this project happen, whether or not we give the letter of support or not, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes, Your Worship. Ultimately, I was going to touch on that. There will still be a detailed site plan review process that we would be subject to our scrutiny and our approval prior to this actually being installed on the property. So they might get the approval from their approval authority. However, there still is a detailed site plan process that needs to go through with the municipality. And that's for both the tour and this site. Those need to happen. They're not yet at the point where they're undertaking those engineering studies and drawings and that level of detail. We've received the conceptual site layout and planting plan, but through that detailed review is really going to get into the nuts and bolts of how that's actually going to function. So yes, there is further study.
There's still some work to do. Go ahead, Councillor Hicks.
Through Your Worship. Mike, have you had any information come back from MPAC on what the assessment would be?
Through Your Worship, no, their council is still reviewing it, unfortunately.
And so no timeline on that.
They were non-committal in a timeline.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Shank. Yeah.
Just for your information, under the Green Renewable Energy Act years ago, it was on a point system. All right. And municipalities had very little say. As the proponent went ahead that's trying to do this, is saying, when we go through this process now, with the change of governments and everything else, if we do not get the municipal approval, it's going to be extremely hard to get that. But my point is if I'm doing business, I would be contact Mike and saying, what are the wants? What are the concerns were? And it wasn't that I didn't ask them when they came here, did the presentation, contact the neighbors. So it's not that it's just that they are not living here locally. I was elected to represent locally, represented to look after the ratepayers. So I cannot in good conscience go ahead and vote for something when they've already said no to it or had grave concerns and weren't contacted. So that's reasoning, my philosophy behind it. So there we go.
Is there anything further? Well, yep, sorry, go ahead, Councillor.
The only thing I can say is I agree with Mike, Councillor Shank. I know those people out there and I know they were concerned about the blight on the landscape. And I would not be in favor of voting for this either. So just wanted to put that out there. I don't know if they're going to be able to contact those people and have a happy meeting or whatever, but I wouldn't be comfortable on voting in favor of that tonight.
Well, and I just to reiterate that this motion is simply whether or not we give them a letter of support. And I think that their due date for having that letter of support is now within a couple of days. Am I correct, Michael?
That's correct. Yeah.
So, I mean, ultimately, we'll make the decision tonight with respect to whether or not we give them a letter of support. And there will be no recourse after that because the due date for the time of the support letter of support will be over. And then they'll have to decide, and I'm sure they will, they'll have to proceed without that letter of support. If I've got this correct.
Yep, you are absolutely correct.
Okay. Well, that's we've got a staff recommendation that council received for information, the growth and expansion Blue Earth Renewables Energy Storage Project request for municipal support resolution report, and further that council pass the support resolution identified as Exhibit A form of municipal support resolution included within the agenda package. Moved by, we'll put it on the floor and then we'll vote. Councillor Pinal, seconded by Councillor Nori. Is there any further conversations or questions or comments with respect to what the motion is and where we're going with it?
Just recorded vote.
Yep, and we can have a recorded vote. So I'll look to the clerk.
Right, sorry. Counselor Ward 1, Counselor Shank,
No.
Ward 2, Counselor Hicks,
Yes.
Ward 3, Counselor Pennell,
Yes.
Ward 4, Counselor Nori.
No.
Ward 5, Counselor Martin,
No.
Deputy Mayor,
No.
Mayor.
Yes. I
That
believe that the
is defeated.
motion has been defeated. So thank you, everyone. And I think that's all we need for this one, is it? Perfect. Thanks, Michael. 10.5 Infrastructure Services 2022 Annual Drinking Water and Wastewater Reports. And I believe Andrew will be speaking to that possibly.
Can we
Sorry.
get a motion to extend time?
Oh, sorry, we'll need a motion to extend past 10 o'clock. Sorry, I missed it. Moved by Counselor, reluctantly, Counselor Hicks. Second by Counselor Martin. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Sorry, Andrew, go ahead.
Just briefly, I'd like to highlight that the attached reports to the staff report are a year's worth of work from our operators and utilities clerical staff, representing hours of sampling, doing tests, upgrades, maintenance, dealing with emergency breaks and so on and so forth. So I simply put all the information together at the end of the year. However, all the work goes on every day by all our operations staff. And I'm available for any questions.
Great, thanks, Andrew. Is there any questions of Andrew with respect to this? Yep, Counselor Pennell, go ahead.
Thank you, Worship, through you. Andrew, thank you very much for these reports. I always enjoy reading them, especially the way your report is written now with all the information on the first page. It's great. Thank you. Got a question. I think I know the answer, but I'm not sure. Why for the Napanee Water Pollution Control Plan? Are we talking about that one right now? Water, which one are we talking about?
The annual drinking water and wastewater reports.
Yeah, okay,
10.5.
sorry. Why is the treated flow 25% higher than what? Sorry, what the wastewater, why is it 25% higher than what the treated water going out was?
Yeah, that's due to infiltration. So there's still areas within our system where we're getting storm water into our plant. It's been ongoing for years that we've tried to improve that. We saw some improvements with the big dig on Dundas Street, but those efforts continue. Some sub pumps, downspouts, so on and so forth. We're cammering the system every year, trying to find those and eliminate those sources.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions, comments? We have a recommendation that council receive for information the 2022 annual reports for the AL Default Napanee Drinking Water System and the Sandhurst Shores Drinking Water System and North Fredericksburg Community Center Drinking Water System and the Napanee Water Pollution Control. Moved by Councilor Pennell, seconded by Councilor Shank. Any further questions or comments?
May I ask one question?
Yep, go ahead, Councilor Shank. Yep.
Did all these reports, this is for Ministry of Health. This is not just for this municipality, just for council, is it?
Sorry, through your worship. Part of the legislation is that these reports are taken to council as the owners of those systems, so that you're aware as to what goes on in them. We are also obligated to send them to the ministry as well.
Thanks, Mike. We need a vote, don't we? All in favor? Opposed, motion's carried. 10.6 infrastructure services summary of 22-23 compliance inspections at both the AL Defo and Santa Shores drinking water systems. Go ahead, Andrew. I see you again.
Yeah, I'll fill in for Christie, your worship. So once again, I'll let my comments of the previous report stand that our 100% compliance at these facilities is due to the hard work of the operations staff on a daily basis. Nothing more to add. Available for any questions.
Great. Any questions for Andrew? Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Shank.
The only thing I would say when it was in your budget originally about the bearings at the one pump lift station has nothing to do with exactly it's Santos, but down by the hydro plant. So when I saw one of those guys, one of the employees working there, maybe a month ago, I stopped, took a look and walked in and you could see the gasket was leaking pretty good. So now when they're saying that they got to pull the motor and change the gasket, I was going, yeah, I'd say so. So it just, for council's reference, if you ever happen to see something like that, just when they say, well, what they have to do and how they have to do that, because it's kind of a small area to lift that, and you're gonna, yeah, it was quite informative. So
yeah,
understandable.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Mike.
Yep.
Is there anything further? Staff recommendation is to receive for information the infrastructure services summary of the 22-23 compliance inspections for the AL Defo Santa Shores drinking water system. Moved by Deputy Mayor Calver, seconded by Councillor Pennell. Is there any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, motion's carried. Thanks, Andrew. Thank you. 10.7, which is Mr. Zetterberg's. Thanks, Brant. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to highlight, in the recommendations from staff about referring cemetery matters to the Recreation Advisory Committee. I just wanted to mention that there is a bylaw that's already approved by council and approved by the Bereavement Authority of Ontario that deals with the burial business that we do. And this by no means is requiring a recreation committee to look at that part of the business. It's only about the open space as far as grass cutting and brush removal, tree removal, as if it's another active park.
Okay, is there any questions or comments for Mr. Zetterberg with respect to the report or the verbal statement he's just made? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Calver.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just to understand, we've got a bylaw that says the cemeteries will not be part of the recreation plan.
So the bylaw deals with the fee structure for burials and that wouldn't be part of this. It's basically the reason why that's referenced the Recreation Committee is because it's the same crews that go out and work on parks that would be working on the cemeteries.
Okay, so will the Recreation Committee be making decisions in regards to the cemetery?
They'd be making recommendations to council as to tree removal and grass cutting. And it could be even as simple as what's the classification for the cemetery? So is it cut at 3 inches, is it cut at 2 inches, or going forward?
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments?
No,
Yep, Councillor Shank, go
the only
ahead.
question I have is, Brent, is I have contacted a couple of people that I know that do tree cutting, and I told them you have to have the right insurance, you have to have the right everything else. All right, but there's a couple more other individuals that would probably do that at a much reduced rate, depending, because it is a cemetery. That's part of our heritage. So they said, yeah, we'll definitely be given a really good break, considering it's not a huge amount of trees. You know what I mean? So that budget is more than I feel that would definitely compensate that, but I think it would be a whole lot less than that. But I understand you're always better to be protecting yourself than not, but that's a little feedback just for you also.
And that, I guess those folks would be kind of classified as volunteers that could help out. Am I reading that right?
Well, I'm not, they have to take a look at the tree first.
Yeah.
But the point is I said, when you get all your ducks in order, have all your insurance and everything else that the municipality would need, you take it to Brant, give it to Brant, so Brant knows. So when he goes through the process, that if there's a tree available, that you have more people going ahead and saying, yes, it's going to cost this, rather than spending a huge amount of money on one tree.
Any other questions or comments? Okay.
Through your worship. So Brant, this is sort of a 50-50. We can't give you everything, so we're not signing the memorandum. You're recommending we don't sign the memorandum of understanding with the Heritage Society. But we are telling them that, yes, we will look after removing the trees, et cetera. Am I understanding this correctly?
Yeah, correct. Through your worship, we agree with what the intent of the memorandum of understanding was. We do not recommend council signing it because it puts us in a liability situation. And they had asked for coverage under account insurance, and the way it was set up, that our insurance company would not give them liability.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hicks. Is there anything further? Okay, we've got a staff recommendation. It's a little bit lengthy, but the council received for information response to the AFHS request for budget considerations for tree removal and signing their proposed memorandum of understanding report, and further that council approved for an additional tax levy of $30,000 for the removal of trees in cemeteries throughout the municipality. And further that council in this term refer cemetery open space policy to the Recreation Advisory Committee. And further that council continue to engage volunteers to work with staff in the betterment of the cemeteries as open, active spaces and destinations for visiting friends and family. Further that the town not sign the memorandum of understanding as presented during the deputation on January 31st, 2023. I think it should be right. Moved by Councillor Pennell, seconded by Councillor Norrie. Is there any further questions, comments, or concerns with respect to the motion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. 10.8, Office of the CAO Service Delivery Review. I believe that's Mr. Pinson.
It is. Thank you, Your Worship. You have the report in front of you. Quite frankly, this is just a piece to see how we can better effectively and efficiently deliver services that used to be delivered in 5 buildings that are now amalgamated into one. Happy to take any questions if there are any.
Is there any questions for Mr. Pinson? Seeing none, I think, oh, sorry, go ahead, Deputy Mayor Calver.
May not even be related to this, but I know there was talk about putting the girls back. Is that in here somewhere or no?
There is, we are going to put one person to manage activities in the arena for now, but yeah, ideally what we're looking at is who do we put where and what structure do we have in place to best effectively deliver all services to the municipality. So that is in play, yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Martin.
Yeah, I was going to ask a similar thing to what the deputy mayor asked, because it's something that's come up 3 or 4 times with myself and members of the public as far as staff out there, the arena goes. So I guess my question is, when are we going to put a staff member out there?
Grant, would you have an answer? I know that we're geared up and getting computers in place up there for that staff member.
Through your worship, right now we're scheduled to have somebody there on February 28th. However, they may not have all the technology in place that they need, but there'll be somebody there.
But what does that mean? They may not have all the technology in place.
For online payments. So there'll be somebody there to be for information, but all the bells and whistles may not be ready yet.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Deputy Mayor Calver.
Might be off topic as well, but I do realize the bar was open this last Friday night at the Raiders game. Yeah, how that made out or turned out? Is that something we're looking at continuing?
That's not within the scope of this report.
We may be able to address that, and I'll look to Madam Clerk. Is that something we can address by statement by members? So you would address it by notice for the motion. Leave it up to you to give me some guidance here.
Through your worship, if council is asking for a staff report to be done on the analysis of how that bar is operated, that is something that should be requested through notice of motion, because it is going to be allocation of staff resources to do that work. So that's why we usually want that council direction given by motion.
Great. I think that,
I'll move.
I think we're
When
going
we
to do
get
it
to
by
that
notice
heading.
to motion.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we best deal with the task at
Yes,
hand, I think.
True.
With respect to the, and I'll forward this to Mr. Pinson, with respect to the Optimus SBR report, and I read through it, and I apologize if I miss it. Will part of the process with Optimus involve coming to council? Or is it simply just a staff related process that Optimus will be involved in?
So your worship, if council's looking for the consultant to come to council to deliver that report, I'm sure that we can arrange that similar, same way that they did the strategic plan.
Not so much with delivering the report, but creating the report. Will there be consultation involved with council members, or will it simply be with staff members?
I'm not sure if we have council included in that, but if council wants to be included in consultation session around the delivery of administrative services, I don't see why we wouldn't do it. I'm not sure if that would increase the price or not. It'd be another consultation session.
Right. Okay. Well, maybe we can, I think it might be helpful. Maybe we can investigate that further.
Sure.
Okay. Is there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we have a recommendation that council receive for information in the office of the CAO Service Delivery Review Report, and further that council authorize the mayor and clerk to execute an agreement with Optimus SBR for the completion of this review. Moved by Councillor Shank, seconded by Councillor Hicks. Is there any further comments or questions with respect to it? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. East Street Construction. That will be Mr. Dayfall. Thanks, Pete. Yep, go ahead.
Okay, through your worship, I think the report is fairly straightforward. I'm just gonna have three quick speaking points for summary. So the submission, so the recommended award to Morgan Construction. A couple of things we'll just point out here is that the unit rates were very competitive. So the actual total tender price came in below construction cost estimates. So that was good news there. As far as the project itself, the project does address significant concerns with some in-ground infrastructure. So staff are looking forward to moving forward with this project so we can eliminate future problems. And with respect to overall price, there was a ranking system. So, you know, the evaluation criteria was 60% cost, and then there's other factors that would equal the sum of 100 there. Those other factors did not change. So basically the lowest submitted tender price is the recommended winner. So essentially it's 100% cost-based lowest bidder. So I'm available for any questions.
Great, thanks, Pete. Is there any questions for Mr. Dayford? Deputy Mayor Calver.
Through your worship, I know you explained it earlier, Pete, but Peter, I just wanted to get a clarification. There's like Corcoran's done a lot of work in the town. What was the reasoning why that? Like, is Morven capable of doing this and handling this job? Like, they are cheaper, I see that, but
Through your worship, so all the bids that were submitted were from very reputable firms that we've worked with in the past. So there was no preference by staff on, and who the preferred contractor was. So it was based on that criteria. With respect to the difference of it, the difference in price, a lot of that came down to the town managing the excess soils. So that by awarding the work to Morgan Construction, the instructions to tenders were very clear. And by awarding it to Morgan Construction, the town is saving nearly $700,000 by managing those excess soils in-house.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, we have a recommendation council receive for information the infrastructure service East Street reconstruction report, and further that council award the tender to the highest ranked bid score Morgan Construction Limited with the deletion of item A10 contractor supplied soils disposal site for the sum of $3,029,002.51, including HST, and further that council approve a total project budget of $3,494,002.51, including HST. Moved by Councillor Shank, seconded by Councillor Martin. Is there any further comments or questions? Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Shank.
The only I have one, could somebody tell me how old East Street, the infrastructure in East Street is? And I was just wondering, because of there's 25% excess flow, would it save 10% in that one street? You know what I mean? Give more capacity at the superintendent. You know what I mean? Like if you, when you do a study, because I imagine you guys did study and you ran a camera through and you said, okay, East Street is the worst one, so we'll do it. So, just some.
So through your worship, so two things. So the diameter of the water main is being increased for future use. It's going to go from 8 inch up to a 12. With respect to sewer capacity, the diameter of that piping is not changing. But what it will do is it's going to replace 100+ clay tile pipe with PVC piping that has watertight seals. So there will be a reduction of I&I in that area of work.
It's a 100-year-old pipe you're replacing. So.
Yeah. Thank goodness it's lasted 100 years.
Exactly.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. If there's no further comments or questions, we'll call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Infrastructure services, utilities, water pollution control plant. Are you going to speak to that possibly, Peter? Okay, go ahead.
Through your worship, this project is a small phase in the grand scheme of things of the upgrade of the wastewater plant in general. So that this is a pre-selection of the actual building. So what it does is it allows staff to get in a position to get this on order, so that when the tender is released for the general contract to do all the civil works, the building is already in queue and ready to go. So it saves us time on the back end. The building itself, just to give you a bit of a snapshot, it's 86 feet by 114, 16 foot high. So there's work bays in there, there's office space. One of the primary features to the building is that it'll have a workshop in there that will be an accessory building to the upgraded wastewater plant. So that's where you see a lot of the work done with the maintenance staff, with the rebuilding pumps or doing electrical work, that type of stuff. That gives them a good, clean work, safe workplace to work on. So.
Is there any questions for Peter on this? Yep. Sorry, go ahead, Councillor Shank, then Councillor Pennell. Yeah.
It's just as long as, because the motion, it says, but there's 50% grant funding for this. So it's not the right, correct, but it's.
Through your worship. So yeah, there's $14 million in federal grant funding. So that can be used towards this project. Correct.
No, the only reason why I'm sorry, Peter, is just I was reading the bottom is financial implications, the eligible cost. And then you had basically, yeah. All right.
And I think it's part of that $51 million project that we're going to do down there. Correct, with that, Peter?
Correct, your worship.
Okay, is there any? Yep. I'm sorry, Councillor Pennell.
Through your worship, thank you, Peter. Just with the note, the letter that's attached to this, regarding the change order after the contract has been awarded. Could you give me an idea of why, or what would be the reason for the cost reduction? Are we giving up something? Are we going to change the design? Or what's involved in this price?
Through your worship, so there's two main criteria in that. One is we changed the design of the building can be changed, so it was not required to be a post-disaster building. So that changes the building construction material to a certain degree. So that lowers cost and allowed us to go to walk away from a very expensive roll-up door system to a traditional industrial garage doors. So there, and it's about $115,000 savings in there to make those two minor changes. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't change the overall function or use of the building at all anyway.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Is there any further questions? If not, we've got a recommendation that council receive for information, the infrastructure services WPC CP upgrade project maintenance garage building pre-selection report, and further that council authorized staff to award the contract for supply delivery and assembly to Belcon Design Builders Limited for the amount of $1,548,645 excluding HST. We'll look for a motion. Councillor Pennell, seconded by Deputy Mayor Calver. Any further questions or comments with respect to this? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Highway 33 road allowance closure request, the WIN update. I'm guessing that would be you. Would it be Jessica?
I guess it would. So through your worship, I believe the report speaks for itself. I will just add that past reports have indicated that the town's practices that we do not spend money on unopened road allowances. However, for the reasons outlined in the report, staff believe it is warranted at this location to hopefully help reduce some of the land use conflict that's happening.
Great, thanks, Jessica. Is there any questions for Jessica with respect to the report? Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, worship. Through Jessica, there was a survey done on this property at one time and just recently, and did we do that or did they do it? Do we own any part of it right now?
Through your worship, we have a copy of the survey on file. It was done last year. The recommendation would be that rather than it being town staff with town GPS equipment out there determining where the posts should go, that we involve a surveyor in that process, just so that it is 100% clear that it's being done objectively and accurately.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And do we know what kind of posts are going to be installed? Will they be like a round guardrail or just a simple T-post?
Through your worship, I'm going to kick that over to that side of the room to answer the question.
I'll jump in. I'm not sure if we know, through your worship to council, I'm not sure we understand quite. I'm assuming it's going to be like a farmer's fence post or something. It's nothing too extravagant, but something that's well put into the ground such that it doesn't move and it can delineate.
Great, thank you.
Boundaries.
Anything further? Seeing nothing, we've got a motion or recommendation that the council receive for information legislative services Highway 33 road allowance closure request WIN update report, and further that council amend resolution 358/22 to strike out the word pedestrian such that the resolution be to leave the road allowance open as a means of passage to water, and further that council direct staff to have the boundaries of the road allowance marked by the installation of posts such that the boundaries of public and private land and any such actions of trespass are clearly identifiable, with the cost of such installation being the responsibility of the town. Moved by Deputy Mayor Calver, seconded by Councillor Hicks. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Opposed, motion's carried. Growth and expansion bylaw to designate one part of 1 foot reserve adjacent to Shank Street as a public highway. And Michael will be up to speak to that one.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. This is linked to a previously approved severance application at the westerly limit of Shank Street on the north side. one of the conditions was that a bylaw be passed, lifting the portion of the 1 foot reserve to then give legal access to the severed lot. The balance of the 1 foot reserve would remain in place. So when subdivisions proceed and there's municipal road adjacent to private lands not subject to a subdivision, typically a 1 foot reserve is placed between the municipal road and that private land just to restrict access and give the municipality better control over future development and access to those lands. So the Committee of Adjustment rendered a decision to provisionally approve a severance at the end of the road. This is one of the conditions, and it's really just to apprise council of the process. We would issue public notice, and a bylaw would come forth to a future meeting.
Thanks, Mike. Any questions for Mike? Seeing none, we have a recommendation that council receive for information the growth and expansion services bylaw to designate one part of 1 foot reserve adjacent to Shank Street as a public highway report, and further that council instruct staff to proceed with the required process, including public notice to dedicate one part of 1 foot reserve adjacent to Shank Street being part of block 28 on registered plan 1182 as a public highway. Moved by Councillor Pennell, seconded by Councillor Norrie. Is there any further questions or comments, concerns? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, motion's carried. Thanks, Mike. Bylaws. I don't see any bylaws that we have tonight. Madam Clerk, new business. Is there any new business for this evening? Notice of motions. I believe Councillor Norrie may have one.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, just instead of doing a motion, I'm doing this, just give it a couple of weeks to think about it, and our clerk has a copy of this. I move that the first meeting of each month, starting March 14th, 2023, be held in the daytime commencing at 9:30 a.m. and the trial run until the first meeting in October 2023, when staff will report on the trial. That's my notice.
Councillor.
So for everyone's awareness through the process, you've now been notified of this motion. You will vote on it at the next meeting.
We can't discuss this now or any concerns.
You can have all the discussion you want over the next 2 weeks and then vote on this
Not tonight.
at the next meeting. A special motion is required for council to give consent to vote on a matter tonight without any further discussion or for.
It's simply giving us a heads up that there will be a motion 2 weeks from now that we can have a robust conversation.
I totally understand what Bob's trying to do. And you know what? But come planting time, that's the right concern.
It sounds like we may have a robust conversation.
Yeah. Well, no. I totally agree with what he's doing.
Is there any other notice of motions? Deputy Mayor Council.
I'd like to make a motion that we take a look at how the bar made out Friday night at the arena and see if we can, that's something we continue doing.
Sorry, I see Mr. Zetterberg's waving frantically. Go ahead, Brad.
Frantically, yes. We've looked up the numbers from Friday night. The bar was, and the lounge was a private rental on Friday night. They paid $233.75 for the rental, and the bartender, the receipts for sales was $106.75. And what I don't have on hand is the cost of goods sold. The cost of the bartender was $44.25. So if it was our bar that we were running there, or if it was the Raiders bar, they may have broke even. And we estimate there was probably about 15 drinks sold during that time.
Madam Clerk, would it be appropriate that if Deputy Mayor Cooper requested a staff report via the notice of motion, or are we good with the information that we've received tonight, Deputy Mayor Cowher?
I'm good with that information.
Are we good with that? So you will draw the notice of motion for now?
Yeah, that's all I was looking for, was just numbers on it, what it was, because it was very well attended. Yes, I realize it was a rental night. The people renting were handing out some coupons and stuff, but I just know as a regular Friday night attender, there's a lot of people asking why it's there but not being used. So what is the cost to, if somebody want to sponsor the bar, is there a cost for that?
We'll direct that question to Mr. Zetterberg. Okay. Oh, Annie Mannion.
Thank you. Through your worship to Deputy Mayor. There would be the lounge, the large lounge rental rate, which would be $68.14 for a half day or less, as well as the bartender fee, which would be $44.25 for the flat rate. And then it would depend on the bar receipts, if that answers your question.
So the lounge rental, because the Raiders have the ice rented for Friday night, that lounge doesn't go with that?
No, that would be a separate rental.
Oh, sorry about that.
I'm gonna
Yeah, go ahead.
jump in here, and I'm assuming some of that is to pay for wages to clean up and take care of the facility. It's something that we've talked about recently in terms of promoting the SPC as a venue for events, kids' birthday parties. I think there's a whole bunch of things that we could do if we better advertise that especially with a restaurant in the building. So I think we're going to start looking at the SPC in terms of how we can market it business through there to support the community and make some money at the same time.
If I may.
Yep, go ahead, Jess.
Through your worship, I will also throw it as a suggestion that in your forward calendar, you will see that there is an upcoming discussion on fees and services bylaw. So that may be an appropriate place to have a conversation about the rates we charge at the SPC.
Great, very helpful. Thanks, Jess. Do we have any other notices to motion? Seeing none. Statements by members. Do we have any statements by members? Hank?
I didn't want to do this under notice of motion because I don't believe I should have to make a motion to this effect, but if I have to, then I'll have to do it at the next meeting because I missed it. But Huff's Road, we have a lot of got people that are using ice fishing. We put hundreds of thousands of dollars fixing that road and widening that road. So when I went down the road, there's no parking on both sides of a boat launch. All right, which is kind of confusing to me, but on the left-hand side or the west side, there's some houses and stuff like this. So I understand maybe no parking there, but on the right-hand side, all right, just take those no parking signs off. All right, so the people that use that boat ramp or to access it, all right, they could continue, go ahead and use that boat ramp the way it is. So that's my philosophy behind it. It's just that it's quite confusing to me. I know this was done in the past, but I don't see where you have a boat ramp and have no parking signs on a road that we widened. Beforehand, it was really narrow, but now that it's wide enough to handle that traffic. Because if you're doing a family event and with family weekend coming up, and if they're out ice fishing and then the weather turns cold enough again that it's safe to do so, that they could park there with their kids, you know what I mean? And access a boat ramp, which is the municipal road ramp that we put money into the road as to all taxpayers. So if that could be done without a motion, I'd be happy. If you need a motion,
Yeah,
we'll make a
well,
motion.
We're going to let Jess speak to that. Thank you, Mike.
Your worship, we are currently working on a project with bylaw staff in partnership with infrastructure to look at our entire parking bylaw. Right now, our parking bylaw still designates that as a no parking road. It hasn't been updated since 2014. I'm sure the road widening probably happened after that date. There may be other locations where the same situation exists, so we want to make sure that we get them all. And if you would like the signs taken down immediately in that section of the parking bylaw made invalid, I would suggest that a motion maybe be passed at the next meeting. But I can let you know that we are aware that we need to make sure that our signs and bylaws still reflect the reality of our streets, and we're working on that.
So go ahead, Mike. Yep.
No, I don't want to belabor it because it's getting quite late. Jessica, I have all the faith in you, but you have to understand, government takes so long to get done. Family weekend or family day is February the 20th. You know what I mean? I don't want to wait 3 months or 4 months. So if you need a motion to do it under urgent business or whatever it could be done, and if council's all in agreement with it, I don't need it to be studied. I don't need it to be done. I just like to have some results done on it. you know, I just think it's kind of ludicrous that, I know it's from 2014, it's not Jessica's fault, not everybody else's fault, but since it was widened, I think it's a no-brainer for me. There we go.
Going to look to Jessica. I mean, I guess in a perfect world, we would bring this forward by way of motion. We would have a staff report to give us the pros and the cons and all that kind of stuff. I'm not sure how we want to deal with it tonight.
Council's procedure bylaw says if you have 2/3 majority, you can say that you can vote on things like this right now under this heading. If you would like, if 2/3 of council is in support of waiving your procedural rules to just deal with this matter right now because you believe it's time sensitive and urgent.
I ask one more question before I ask for a 2/3 majority, or you ask me 2/3. John, what are the pros and cons against this? I see you, huh?
So it's, I don't know if there are pros and cons. I remember being in another municipality where we were arguing about parking and staff reports, and basically, why am I going to do a staff report if council says take the signs down? So I'd be fully supportive of 2/3 or whatever the rules are. Council says take signs down, we'll take signs down. I don't see the reason why we'd waste our time on a staff report.
There you go, because it's common sense. Thank you.
So this is in Ward 3, as your worship knows.
Ward 2.
Or sorry, Ward 2, my bad. It's late. Where am I? What day is it? So the rocks that have been placed, the large rocks, I don't know if you're, Terry and Mike, I'm sure are aware of them, and Brian. Who placed those rocks there and whose property are those rocks on? Like I'm talking Armor Stone. Yes, please.
So, through your worship, are you referring to the ones if you're driving towards the water, they're on your left side?
They're on the left
Yeah.
side,
So we
yes.
get surveys established where the municipal road allows ended.
Yep.
And we push them back.
Okay, so they are where they,
in-
yeah.
in quite a bit.
Uh-huh. Okay, so they are where they need to be. And as someone who has never backed up a trailer, but has witnessed it being done, what side of the road is best to have the cars parked on? East or west?
Yes. Yeah, on the side where Councilor Shank recommended, so
Mhm.
they're not close to the houses.
Okay.
Preferred by the president.
Right, okay. So I just wanted that. I don't know if anybody's even still up and watching, but I'm totally in favor of a 2/3 because opening day is coming sooner than later. Not just family day, but.
That's right.
So how do we going to address this, Madam Clerk? Can we just do
Through your worship, if we could get a motion for council to amend its procedural rules to allow the discussion of Huff's Road to be voted on right now. And then we'll look for 2/3 majority for that to be passed. And then if that passes, then we'd look for that specific motion to direct that the parking bylaw be amended to specifically remove those no parking restrictions on either both sides of Huff's Road or one side of Huff's Road, whatever council is wanting to see done there. But the first motion is that we amend the procedural rules to allow this matter to be voted on immediately.
motion moved by Councillor Hicks, seconded by Councillor Shank? And we will require 2/3 of the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now, Madam Clerk, we will need.
Councillor Shank wants to make his motion.
You want to make it or you want me to make it? Okay, I'll make it. Go ahead. That I believe, Peter, it's the east side, all right? That the no parking signs be removed. All right? On that road. On the west side where there's houses and where access is. And you know what? If it ends up being a big mess, I'll eat my words and we'll have to change it again. But all I'm saying is let's give them a kick in the cat after we've done the road. There we go.
I'm sure you'll be the first one we come to see, Mr. Councillor Shanks.
You know what? I get them all the day, so fill your boots, boys.
Okay, Councillor Shank has made a motion, seconded by Counselor Hicks. Any further comments, questions, or concerns? All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, I think we're through statement by member.
Good job there. Sir.
I think. Next up, CAO remarks.
Just a couple. Thank you, Your Worship. I know the utilities guys don't get much fanfare, but I would like to really thank them for all the work they do. I know the reports we get back from the ministry are important for this municipality as we are all stewards of our safe drinking water. Secondly, I know the mayor was on a call we had with the Ministry of Environment today, the Deputy Ministry of, or Infrastructure, I should say, and several senior staff members. And I thought we as a municipality with senior staff and the mayor did a very good job in articulating our position in terms of getting additional funding for our new wastewater treatment plant. So kudos to everybody involved in that.
Great, thank you, Mr. Pinson. And I know this isn't where I'm supposed to talk, but I'm going to anyways, because the meeting today was probably one of the best presentations I've seen. It flowed unbelievably well, and I have to thank staff for doing that because they were the ones that made this thing happen. And even though we didn't get any guarantees from the Minister of Infrastructure, I'm pretty sure she was very engaged with it and wanted to hear what we had to say, and had a number of staff there as well. So I have a good feeling about that, but nobody is going to commit to anything at this point, but I really have a good feeling about it. So thank you, staff, for doing what you do. It was a marvelous job, and I know we've already spoken, but it's well worth putting out there in the public as well. So thank you, Mr. Pinson, as well. So, okay, the forward calendar. Do we have any conversations, questions with respect to the forward calendar? Seeing none. Confirm the proceedings. We'll look for a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Greater Napanee. Moved by Councillor Hicks, seconded by Councillor Pennell. Read a first, second, and finally passed. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Motion for adjournment. Moved by Deputy Mayor Calver, seconded by Councillor Norrie. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much, folks. I know it was another long evening, but thank you very much. And we got a lot accomplished tonight. Good night.